Hi, I'm Ana Marie Cox. I'm an adjunct loser and a co-host of a new podcast called Space the Nation. I've been covering politics for over 20 years. My co-host, Dan Dresner, is a professor of international relations at Tufts University, and we're both huge science fiction nerds. So our podcast is about the politics in science fiction, how characters and plot lines deal with power structures and alliances, economic forces and class struggles, and how these events reflect historical events and are explained by real political theory. We also do some serious fan personing. If you're a Stephen King fan listening to a 2-hour Stephen King podcast, I think you'll like it. We just finished recapping The Expanse Season 5, and now we're moving on to look at things like Ender's Game, Alien, and The Left Hand of Darkness. If you're interested, you can find out more on patreon.com/spacethenation, or you can get us wherever you get your podcasts. See you there.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome yet again to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast. Summer's here. Not just summer either, not this year, but the apotheosis of summer, the avatar of summer, high green, perfect central Ohio summer, dead smash in the middle of July. That's right, constant listeners. Today we are here to discuss The Regulators, one of the doggone weirdest books in King's long career. If you missed it, scroll further down our feed to find both our episodes. We got 2 on its mirror book, quote unquote, Desperation, and stay tuned for an episode devoted to the sticky glue that binds them. Before we get started, however, let's introduce our panel of suburban yokels. Jenn, say hello and tell us about your first encounter with The Regulators.
Hi, this is Jenn the Rage Adams, and this is my third read of Regulators. I read this, I think, when it came out, and I remember going to the bookstore and seeing that there were 2. And I can't remember exactly why I picked Regulators, but I think because it seemed more kind of action oriented, and I guess it reminded me of Power Rangers or something. So or the synopsis grabbed me or something. But so I read this, and then I just never went back and read Desperation until I did my chronological reread and I got to this a couple of years ago. So I read it again then. And then, so this is my third time through, and I think I like this book. I don't know. Do we want to talk about our feelings about it right now?
I think the broad level feelings I think are good.
Okay, so it's hard to say I like this book because there are some things in this book that absolutely appall me that I really hate. But I think the broad strokes of this book and the theme that I think King is going for, especially in connection with Desperation, I think I find more accessible because I think that because it is a Bachman book, there's a coldness there. And in the Desperation episode, I talked about how some of it is it's too emotional for me to really want to engage with. And I don't really find much of that emotion here. This is a really mean book. Like it even says on my cover, lean and mean. And I think that's a good explanation. And those are some of the parts that I don't really like, which we'll get into. But I find the broad strokes of this I did enjoy. Yeah. There are details that I hate that we'll talk about too, but yeah.
We'll touch on them. And what edition did you read on this go around?
Well, I listened to the audiobook,
nice.
Which is, and I found out it's an abridgment. As I started to do my notes, like what I do is I make notes on my phone and then I check it with the text. And I found some things that were left out and some a sentence here or there, so it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I feel like I read the physical book and I've listened to it, so I don't feel like it's really losing much of the story. I just think there's a little context that's missing, which I have some examples of.
Who reads the audiobook?
I can't remember. I think it might be
Frank Muller.
Frank Muller. It's not Frank Muller. It's a lady. I think it's Lindsay Krause, but I'll have to check that for sure. I'll check, and while everyone else is talking, I'll let you know.
Awesome. Dan Pfleegor, say hello. And when did you first read The Regulators?
Hey, this is Dan, Mr. Warren G. Pfleegor.
Love
Regulators. I actually read this book right after Desperation, so in 2005. I have the original first edition, but this was actually my third time reading it. I did the Frank Muller reading, or audiobook, I should say.
Oh, there are two? Huh.
Yeah, no, it's so weird. I generally found that I think maybe because I'm looking at less than savory websites with some of the audiobooks, but I found the audio, but I own the actual copy, so sorry, Stephen C. in court. Anyway, yeah, not my favorite. I think it's funny that it's dedicated to Sam Peckinpah in the beginning of the book, because this is a bloodfest.
Yeah. So how did you feel about it when you first read it back in 2005?
I think I was just excited because it was one of my first takes on King. Like, I read Cujo in 4th grade, didn't read any King until college, and then I just went on like a tear.
Yeah.
So went through the Dark Tower series and then any book that I already owned or could get my hands on. So I like the twinning aspect of it. Just, oh, that's cool. But more and more, I'm like, man, I kind of wish these books were either merged together. I don't know. We'll get into it on the pod, but
yeah, cool.
Not my favorite.
Sure. Ana, say hello and tell us how you first read The Regulators and what edition you read this time around.
This is Ana Marie the Maggot Cox.
Hey.
I think I'm finally come up with my standard nickname there.
Love it.
So I'm having trouble placing when I first read this. Like I've said before, like some King was read during my height of my drinking years, so like I have a very fuzzy memory of a lot of it. But this book I remember really well. In 1996 would have been, I was still relatively like functional. So I can't place it right away, but I do remember I read it, and I do remember I thought it was really weird then. I don't know if I dislike it a lot more now. And it's funny because I'm the defender of like the weird, like trippy King, but this is the sober trippy King, which I think is maybe not as interesting. Like that's the thing about this book is I don't think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, what we were saying before about desperation is that King is really earnest. Bachman is not earnest.
Right.
Like that's the difference, right? And he's not like trying to figure something out. It's just like violence for violence's sake. And sometimes, and I feel like the gimmick is just for gimmick's sake too. Like, I mean, there's some stuff I think is a little bit interesting and we can talk about it, of course. But I'm reading a first edition and I have a very, very funny, like, I guess, can people see like what this says?
Yeah. To me,
school is life now. KUB.
Oh.
And I feel very, very like sad and intrigued about that. Like, I identify. And I can see actually doing that to a book myself, being like, fuck it. Like this is my book. I'm giving it to me.
Yeah.
So
wait,
anyway.
So that was in the book when you got it?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's funny.
To me, school is life now.
Maybe it's possessive. School's life.
It does say, well, actually, what's funny is it has school with a quote mark.
Yeah.
Like, so the whole thing is like school is life now in a quote. So
Not an English
who
major,
knows?
maybe.
Something was happening for KUB.
Yeah. Sounds like a rough year.
Yeah. So
That's
I do
awesome.
love the cover. Like I will.
The cover's
really
awesome.
good.
And you had the first edition?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, this is Rockin' Randall, the Cruel Randall, the Despot Colburn. And I remember pretty vividly reading Regulators for the first time. It wasn't at the same time as Desperation, because I have like a very specific memory of reading Desperation, which I talked about in the last episode. But Regulators is a book I got from the library, I think maybe a year later or so. And I remember being really intrigued by it, perhaps in the same way you were, Jen, because you mentioned the idea of like Power Rangers like being an appealing thing. And I remember it was like that for me too, because I was really intrigued, and this remains to this day. I like when books can like take really, really popular things from pop culture. Like not like with King where it's all like 50s and 60s classic rock, but like really modern, like Power Rangers. Like I'd never seen children's characters like that in a horror novel before. Like that was an interesting concept to me. And when I read this whole concept, and I was really into violent stuff when I was young, so I was really much like, oh my god, a bunch of crazy Power Rangers like come out with shotguns and just blow away this whole suburban community. And I lived in a suburban community, so I was like, yes, this is right up my alley. And yeah, and that remains to this day. And I remember that was sort of one thing, because I'd only read it one time when I was young, and so revisiting it I was excited, because I'm like, I wonder how that stuff kind of holds up. The idea that he sort of created this mini world within it of his own whimsical but also violent children's world and entertainment, and then merging that with kind of this old Western. It's just such a strange idea that really shows, I think, how steeped King is in pop culture, and how, especially at that time. And it was such a far cry from a lot of his other books. You know, Desperation is in its way gloomy, and it's in the desert, and then Insomnia and like Dolores Claiborne and Gerald's Game and Rose Madder, like those were really intense thematically, and I think I was really drawn to the playfulness of the premise. And so I remember liking it in terms of the gore descriptions are really gnarly, and I was really into that at the time. And I love high body counts, at least back then I did. And so I remember I enjoyed it for that reason, but I remember feeling a little bit confused and unsatisfied by the ending, which we'll talk about. And I think I felt pretty similar these days. But, you know, Ana, what you said about, like, I think you were just touching on the coldness and the meanness. Jenn, you were mentioning that too. I think what stands out to me about Bachman is that I think he hates his characters, like, for the most part. Yeah, like I think he likes, you know, a couple of them maybe, but he's really judgmental and nasty about the majority of characters. Especially the women in this book. I think he's like the characters are so fucking mean to these like people who are in the middle of a crisis, and he's like, stop crying, you know? Right. And it's just like she just saw her parents get murdered.
God, and those two young men who are just like him getting like revenge on the jocks he must have like,
seriously
hated in high school, like
the hunky Reed boys. So yeah, let's pop and talk about the history of this book a little bit. I think that like there was actually surprisingly quite a bit of it. It was released by Dutton on September 24th, 1996, alongside Desperation, published under the name Richard Bachman, his pen name. This was his first Bachman book in 10 years since Thinner, and it won't be his last, spoiler alert. And then there was a note at the beginning of the book that explains why we're getting a new Bachman book, and I'm going to read it for you all right now. Before his death from cancer in late 1985, Richard Bachman published 5 novels. In 1994, while preparing to move to a new house, the author's widow found a cardboard carton filled with manuscripts in the cellar. These novels and stories were in varying degrees of completion. The least finished were longhand scribbles in the steno notebooks Bachman used for original composition. The most finished was a typescript of the novel which follows. It was in a manuscript box secured with rubber bands, as if Bachman had been on the verge of sending it to his publisher when his final remission ended. The former Mrs. Bachman brought it to me for evaluation, and I found it at least up to the standards of his earlier work. I have made a few small changes, mostly updating certain references, substituting Ethan Hawke for Rob Lowe in the first chapter, for instance, but have otherwise left it pretty much as I found it. This work is now offered, with the approval of the author's widow, as the capstone to a peculiar but not uninteresting career. My thanks to Claudia Eshelman, the former Claudia Bachman, Bachman scholar Douglas Winter, Elaine Coster at New American Library, and to Carolyn Stromberg, who edited the earliest Bachman novels and validated this one. The former Mrs. Bachman says that to the best of her knowledge, Bachman never traveled to Ohio, although he might have flown over it once or twice. She also has no idea when this novel was written, although she suspects it must have been late at night. Richard Bachman suffered from chronic insomnia. And that was a message from Chuck Verrill, New York City. That's King's longtime editor. So yeah, some cheeky play going on there. And King himself actually, kept up the ruse in a statement that was in the press materials for the book. He said, "The most interesting thing about the Regulators is that Bachman and I must have been on the same psychic wavelength. It's almost as if we were twins, in a funny way, like the Reed boys." So
sure, like everyone knew he was Bachman here.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, This reminds me, I just want to say, like, of him being in a band. Like it is so self-indulgent. It is like so like I'm sure he was giggling the entire time, like like I'm having so much fun with this.
Yeah,
And
I think that's part of the fun of Bachman with him is that I think he finds
it's fun for him. I mean, like I don't know if
Exactly.
that translates into fun for the rest of us.
Yeah, they describe it as Stephen King without a conscience, but I'm like, maybe it's Stephen King without a proper manuscript sometimes. And I say that as a fan of most of the Bachman books, but I think at this point, maybe, I don't know, cat's out the bag, everyone knows it's him, and it sort of, it doesn't hold up to some of the other, that joke's not funny anymore.
It's Stephen King without an editor. I mean, like, in a self-editor, too. Like, it's him, it's like no editor and no self-editor. Like,
I don't know that you would get this published on its own if it didn't have the tie-in to Desperation. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a permission structure, to say and do things. Like, and if I look at Desperation, like if he's writing that and there are some really heavy themes and he got tired of the emotional labor of dealing with those things, I wonder if this was him kind of dumping a lot of the pressure off, and trying to just like, well, what if I made this story as mean as possible, and like getting that out of his system. So, and
by all accounts, he started writing Regulators literally the day after he finished Desperation. So I think I like the idea of framing it as sort of a release valve kind of book, like just something kind of loony and violent and nutty where it was like catharsis for him after unpacking his demons so thoroughly in Desperation.
I mean, just so indulgent though, and like an example of like what, in a way, it's the kind of thing fucking Johnny Marinville would do like, from Desperation. Like, I'm just gonna write a trash novel now, ha ha ha, and I can get my laundry list published, so I might as well like do this. And
trash novel is a good word.
I'm clearly already annoyed.
Did you like the book, Ana?
Right.
So this was released obviously in double packs with Desperation with mirroring artwork, which is really cool. We've talked about that. But it also had a 500 copy limited edition release selling for $325. And that was in 1996 money. So, and I didn't know about this before, but basically it was available on a first come, first served basis via phone order. Each copy contained a fake check signed by the non-existent Bachman, each made out to a friend or associate of King's or one of his fictional characters. For instance, one check was made out to the Overlook Connection, an independent bookstore specializing in all things King. Another was made out to Quitters, Inc., the anti-smoking organization immortalized in King's short story of the same name. The book came in a cloth-covered box featuring artist Alan M. Clark's conception of a power wagon, the vehicles driven by the Regulators. So if you are one of our fans and you have one of those fancy copies, please post a photo of it to our socials. We'd love to see it. Lord knows I did not have $325 in 1996 to spend on books. The book is dedicated to Jim Thompson and Sam Peckinpah. He says, legendary shadows. Sam Peckinpah, the filmmaker, The Wild Bunch, Straw Dogs, a lot of Western, very violent. Jim Thompson, the writer behind The Killer Inside Me, which is kind of a classic, cult classic book, and also very violent. So, the influences are pretty obvious here, and there's a deeper connection to Peckinpah. But before that, do we have any fans of Peckinpah Thompson on the pod? Deep fans?
My dad. When I was growing up, my dad would always be like, "This is the most gory movies," and I think it's a little dated. Like, I appreciate them, but I lean more toward the Sergio Leone type westerns. Peckinpah, like you said, kind of a high body count, but. Yeah, I don't know if it ages as well. It's definitely got respect for him, like good director, but just maybe of his time.
Sure. Yeah, I was never. I've seen Straw Dogs, but I've not seen Wild Bunch. So I've got some blind spots when it comes to that. And Thompson, I've never read, but I have some friends who are very into him.
Thompson is Killer Inside Me, especially, and also it involves a psychopathic sheriff, as I recall. Like that's the main character. Yeah, it's a portrait of a sociopath. Like it's told in first person sociopath, and I would it's a classic for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I know they made a film like maybe a decade ago or something with Casey Affleck.
I'm gonna double check. Double check that it's a sheriff, but I'm pretty sure.
Was it with Rob Lowe also? Or...
King loves Rob Lowe.
On that point, though, I was gonna say with Parks and Rec, I guess Rob Lowe could have been updated in the new one because he kind of had a resurgence.
Yes, it is a West Texas deputy sheriff who is the titular Sociopath.
So yeah, that makes some sense there. But yeah, the Peckinpah dedication is interesting because The Regulators was born in part from a screenplay called The Shotgunners that King had written in the late 70s that he then worked on with Peckinpah. He was doing some revisions based on Peckinpah's notes, but Peckinpah died in 1984 while the script was in revision, so the project never happened. I have a quote here from King. He said, "The truth is I had a screenplay long before I met Sam, which was towards the end of his life. We talked at the UN Plaza and Kirby McCalley was there because he had set up the meeting. Sam was looking for a picture to make, and I had this screenplay that was called The Shotgunners, which I had for a long time and went back something like 5 years. It was one of these feverish things that I'd written in about a week. I really like it, but there was not interest in it. Sam read it, liked it a lot, and suggested some things for the script that were really interesting. I thought that I could go back and do a second draft. Unfortunately, Sam died about 3 months later, and I never worked on the script." First off, how King was at the height of his, the late 70s, and he had a screenplay, an original screenplay, and nobody wanted to produce it. It must have been really bad. That's just all I think. I'm just like, you'd think they would be scooping that up at that time.
Right.
Do you think maybe if it didn't have the book attached, like they wanted book sales for a built-in audience, and if it was just a standalone screenplay, they were still a little wary?
That might be true.
King can't really write dialogue very well. I love him, but I don't like his dialogue, so it could just be that he rounded out a lot of the
dialogue pretty well. But
yeah, that's true.
I can't.
That is true. Yeah.
But we've all seen Sleepwalkers, so
yeah.
If we did a King, King, high off his nut episode, I think you'd have to do, what's the gas station one? Maximum Overdrive.
Oh yeah.
Well, and when I say I don't think he writes dialogue that well, I think it's when the dialogue is on a screen and I don't get all of the background information about the thought processes. That's when it stands out to me. Because I agree, and I think he does write children's dialogue very well, but we just lose a lot of, I think, what makes the dialogue gives the dialogue context, So
we talked about that on the Last Stand episode because he wrote that one and how a lot of his dialogue just works better on the page, inherently,
Yeah.
So King's story was also modeled in part after Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch. Both have a character named Major Pike. One can also draw a line between Regulators and Jerome Bixby's It's a Good Life, the story of a child who controls reality, made famous by The Twilight Zone and its 1983 movie. Classic story, obviously. As for this particular book, King came up with the idea near the 3/4 mark of desperation. According to the complete Stephen King universe, he jotted down a single word on a scrap of paper, Regulators, and slapped it on the side of his printer. At the time, he only knew it had something to do with toys, guns, TV, and suburbia. Clearly, however, it evolved into something that mashed together a number of disparate ideas. And he talked about that in an interview. Just the general idea that I think he had a couple loose kind of clanging ideas in his head, specifically from this screenplay, and was like, let's take them, bundle them into a sack, put them in this book. And of course, that doesn't always result in the best thing, and a lot of indulgence, as we've said many times. So, and then I have this brief quote that he wrote in an essay about Bachman that he wrote around the time of Regulators, and we're going to talk more about this in the next episode, but I'll just read this quote to help illuminate sort of, the connection that exists between desperation and Regulators. So he said, "Then an even more exciting idea struck me. If I could use the rep company concept with the characters, I could use it with the plot itself. I could stack a good many of the desperation elements in a brand new configuration and create a kind of mirror world. I knew even before setting out on this course that plenty of critics would call this twinning a stunt, and they would not be wrong, exactly. But I thought it would be a good stunt, maybe even an illuminating stunt, one which showcased the muscularity and versatility of story, its all but limitless ability to adapt a few basic elements into endlessly pleasing variations, its prankish charm." And just to add context to the repertory company idea, he said that he used the characters from Desperation like the members of a repertory company acting in two different plays. So then he did that with the plot as well. And the final bit of history here is this has never been adapted, but King did tweet in 2014 that Regulators was being considered as a TV series at the time, but nothing has come of that thus far. Do you guys think it would make a good TV show?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It feels you'd have to change a lot of details, but like it seems paced well. I think I could see it going for about 8 episodes, and also I could see it expanding.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it'd be a good limited series. I think that its flaws would not be as obvious in a series, and I think you'd have to slim it down in a way that would probably be useful. You'd probably have less poop. So
I think this might have actually worked better as like a mini series than a book versus Desperation, which I think works better as a book than the TV movie. I think some of the visuals and the fighting and the action would have been better realized on screen than on page here.
Yeah. Well, it makes
I
me
found
wonder.
myself looking for fan art of this book because I actually had trouble conceptualizing some of like the dream floaters. Like I kept on trying to like picture like what is he actually talking about here.
And did you find any?
There's not a lot.
Really?
There's not a lot of fan art for it.
Yeah, no, I kept pulling back to with Power Rangers, which when Randall, I think me and you were about the same age, like third, fourth grade when it was on TV, and sort of a take on Voltron. So every time they talked about Moto Cops, I was visualizing the Power Rangers. Yeah. But it never quite got there for me. And now I kind of want to look up the fan art. I'm sure there's like a deviant art site with like, I don't know, some horrible images. But
it is funny. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
I was gonna say, I actually kind of have the opposite. I had an easier time visualizing a lot of this, and because I'm not a visual reader, and so that's part of why I struggle with the Dark Tower series, is because when I'm having to create original scenery or things based on the text, I get really I have a hard time doing that. But here I feel like every visual is so grounded in something I've already seen, or it's like close enough to Power Rangers, or like I know what a cactus looks like, even if it doesn't make sense in the scene, I can plonk it in there, whereas I'm not having to create as much. And that might be part of why I liked it more, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny. Like, I feel like the background stuff actually is really well done. Like, I actually love the sort of depiction of the child's drawing come to life parts of it. It's really literally the dream floaters that I was like, wait, what is he? Like, I don't know.
I agree with that.
It's not completely fleshed out either, I think. Like,
yeah. Like he knew exactly what he was talking about.
Right.
So.
Like we can't actually watch this show, Steve. Like it's not, you know, you had to tell us a little bit.
A few quotes from King on Regulators. He said, "I used to have these activity books that I played with on rainy days when I was a kid. They had this trick where you could get an interesting look at your face, a different look of your face, by placing a mirror perpendicular to half of your face. It makes a reflection that is a whole face. In a way, that is what the Regulators in Desperation are." He also had this quote about Richard Bachman that I thought was interesting. He said, "Obviously, I'm Richard Bachman, and when I write as Richard Bachman, it opens this part of my mind. It's like this hypnotic suggestion where I become my idea of who Richard Bachman is. It frees me to be somebody who is a little bit different. In a way, the Regulators in Desperation are really different books. However, what makes them interesting isn't the differences, but the similarities." And we can talk more about that later because I'm not sure.
Wow, it's so weird to hear his own words though, like the freedom, limitless, endless. Yeah. You know, he makes it sound like he can do whatever he wants. And I don't think this is as big of a swing as maybe he's placing it.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I think it would actually have been better if he would have went just hog wild.
I wonder where this is sort of in his sobriety journey, because he relapses at some point in the late 90s, right?
If he does, I'm not sure, yeah.
I'm trying to remember. There's a relapse that's relatively, like, he relapsed around, you know, whatever, the big accident. Like, that's... Yeah. Because this is real, like, not humble thinking, you know?
Yes.
Like, the humility is maybe he wasn't hitting as many meetings as he should. I mean, this is like me projecting a little bit, but like I agree that him thinking how hot shit this is like is really off-putting. Like I was actually, so like I said, I did a discussion about Ender's Game recently, and the Orson Scott Card introduction to Ender's Game almost ruins it because he fucking loves that book and thinks it's really special and talks about how important it is and how many children write him about how they see themselves in it. When I'm like, that's not necessarily good, Orson. Like, and King's intros generally are pretty humble.
Yeah, like it's very true.
He really sort of sees himself as a servant of his own writing most of the time. Obviously, like when he writes that, he does not see him as himself as a servant of his muse. Like, anyway,
which I think is interesting because he's not writing as like he's writing as Bachman, and so I guess he sees Bachman as not that, you know, which is why I don't like his Bachman books as much.
Yeah, it's interesting that we bring all that up because this was his era of gimmickry. Like the same year he released Green Mile in, multiple installments, sort of channeling Dickens in that way. And then this was around the time that he kind of, in a way pioneered the ebook industry by releasing Riding the Bullet, and then also was doing The Plant, which he was releasing online in segments so long as people paid for it. And then, of course, he stopped because people weren't paying for it, which I will always say, I've talked about this before, it was, I was really young at the time, I didn't have a credit card, and it was really hard for me to buy things online at that time, so I did not pay for it. But that was only because the technology was very, very primitive at that time. So if he tried it again, I would happily give him $3 to read a new chapter from The Plant.
Even if you had a credit card, they would have to use the machine, the cha-chunk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. So
send somebody to your house.
Well, I remember in those early days of Amazon, I had sent checks. I sent checks to Amazon to get books from them. It's just so funny. My first book I ever bought from them was Trainspotting. I still remember that very vividly. So, critical reception. How did critics react to the Regulators? Well, not great. Entertainment Weekly, they gave a good review, I believe, to Desperation, and they said, the Regulators mostly reads like the kind of odd patchwork indulgence that should have stayed in the cellar where we learn in a too cute editor's note it was quote-unquote discovered among the quote-unquote late Richard Bachman's papers. Joe Klein, check your attic. I don't get that reference.
So Joe Klein wrote the book about Bill Clinton under the pseudonym Anonymous.
Oh.
And there was this whole, I'm at least 10 years older than all of you. I think a little more. I was out of college in 1996. So it was a really big deal in the literary, publishing industry. It was a bestseller, and Joe Klein kept denying that it was him.
Oh, really?
And then it was one of the actually early uses of that AI that figures out who wrote what.
Oh, interesting.
They used a computer program to figure out that it was Joe Klein, and finally he had to fess up that it was him. So anyway, so there's a little history that
thank you for that.
Your age wouldn't know, because it really didn't matter in the end.
I knew it. I knew the reference. I got a political science degree, though. So.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
I worked with Joe Klein, and he was a pompous asshole.
Well, I worked with Mark Rich. No, I know where the bodies are buried.
Yeah.
All right.
He probably is a pompous asshole. Who knows? I haven't talked to him in a long time.
The Laborious Story, which is not a sequel, not a prequel, and not worth bothering with, finds a bunch of addled Ohio suburbanites defending themselves against gun-toting monsters in a place that, as one character explains, is partly the Old West as it exists on TV, and partly a place called the Force Corridor, which only exists in a TV cartoon version of the 23rd century. Got it? Me neither. The Regulators reeks of desperation, and not in a good way. After 37 books, King's earned the clout to publish one this silly, and even his most devoted readers have earned the right to skip it. But not us, because we are an exhaustive Stephen King podcast. I found one positive review. Actually, mostly, let me see here. Okay, yeah. I have one from the New York Times that's kind of more lukewarm. It says, Mr. King amplifies the splatterpunk with a super saturation of documents, Seth's scrawled drawings, handwritten journals, letters, film scripts, and teleplays that endlessly repeat his tax saga. But the exploding typefaces, like the steady ricochets from desperation, never accrue much resonance. A crafty short story lost under a landslide of print. I think that's probably true. And we'll talk more about the super saturation of documents a little bit later. And then Publishers Weekly, I found the positive review. They said, this devilishly entertaining yarn of occult mayhem married to mordant social commentary is pure King and resembles little the four non-supernatural, if science fictional, pre-Thinner Bachmans. But one thing is certain. Call him Bachman or call him King, the Bard of Bangor is going to hit the charts hard and vast with this white knuckler knockout. What a sentence.
Right.
And then I have this bit from, we always like to revisit Grady Hendrix's Stephen King reread for Tor.com, which he did back in the mid 2010s. And he always kind of begins his reviews with sort of a capsule review that I like. He says, the title for The Regulators came to Stephen King first, the gimmick came second, and the book came third. And like one of Roger Corman's AIP productions, where the poster and title were developed long before anyone started writing a script, the results are 1% inspiration, 99% exasperation. Desperation. This is the book version of Reptilicus or Muscle Beach Party, thin, undemanding entertainment that doesn't add up to much. The Regulator sports all the writerly elegance of a clumsy dog knocking over a sack of aluminum cans. So yeah, definitely not the most beloved among King's books. And this is the kind of book too where when I think about, like, I don't know, oddball King fans, right? Of which I know many and of which I consider myself one. When you're digging deep into his archive, a lot of people like to prop up the deep cuts and say, well, you should check out this one. It's really crazy. It's really wild. I feel like none of those people I know are big Regulators fans either. So yeah, like, it's like even the people who love the weird stuff are like, man, this one, it ain't doing it.
Tommy Knocker's Defender comes in and says, yeah.
I know, and we are the Tommy Defenders. But
I think, though, on the
go ahead.
critical reception, I think that the idea, too, of, like, kind of the gimmick preceding the story makes a lot of sense. Like, I appreciate what he was trying to do with the twinning, but it almost makes me wonder if he even held back a little bit on Desperation just so he could have the pair versus, like, if it would have been better to kind of just create one great novel instead of one okay one and one not so great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the White Album argument.
I don't think this would have done well as a mashup into Desperation at all. I mean, I think he is actually it would be an interesting short story.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
about
I'm not saying
television and about violence in suburbia, right? Like, I could see it getting slimmed down into a short story that had nothing to do with Desperation.
I think it dilutes the two. Just taking some of the Tok stuff, I don't know. I like Tok is maybe a little bit more of an active character in the Regulators, but I don't know. I just think he kind of watered it down for the effect of the twinning, which, again, I appreciate the attempt here, but
yeah.
And I don't necessarily say I'm going to be a Regulators defender because I don't know if I like it that much, but like, I do enjoy the gimmick. And I think this kind of helps me clarify how I feel about Desperation. And I don't want to talk too long about that because I've got more thoughts about it for the mashup episode, but I do enjoy like the twinning aspect of it. And it kind of just helps me see things in another way.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I do think that there is some complementary moments, like moments where I feel like I understand perhaps Johnny a little bit more, or at least an aspect of him that I didn't know before. So I do think that's something we can discuss in the next episode. But yeah, let's hop into the book itself here. I'm going to read a synopsis that I pulled here. I believe this one's from Amazon. Because like the one from my book, I have the Signet edition with the TV behind some barbed wire on the cover. And, basically, the synopsis here is just really basic. There's a place in Wentworth, Ohio, where summer is in full swing. It's called Poplar Street. Up until now, it's been a nice place to live. The idling red van around the corner is about to change all that. Let the battle against evil begin.
See, and that hooks me. I want to read that book, and that's probably why I picked this over Desperation. It's just, there's a lot more than just that paragraph.
Yeah, and I'll add too, Jen, like I think that is something that drew me into was the suburban aspect, because I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, and it was honestly rare for me. Like when I was in school, I wasn't reading books that were about the suburbs, and obviously there are many, many books about the suburbs, but there weren't, at least in the realm of literature that I was reading at the time. I felt like I wasn't seeing any books that reflected my day-to-day. And of course, this book doesn't reflect my day-to-day, but it did to some degree resemble the neighborhood that I grew up in.
Same.
All right, I'm going to read the synopsis from Amazon. It says, it's a gorgeous midsummer afternoon along Poplar Street in the peaceful suburbia of Wentworth, Ohio, where life is as pleasant as you could ever dream it to be. But that's all about to end in a blaze of gunfire and sudden violence, forever shattering the tranquility and the good times here. For the physical makeup of Poplar Street itself is now being transformed into a surreal landscape straight out of the active imagination of the innocent and vulnerable Seth Guerin, an autistic boy who's been exposed to and possessed by a horrific otherworldly force of evil, one with sadistic and murderous intent, and who is willing to use whatever means necessary to grow ever stronger. Does anybody have another synopsis that they have that perhaps hook them, or anything interesting? What does it say in the original edition?
The original edition? Okay.
Yeah.
Author of the best-selling novel Thinner, and 4 thrillers that have sold millions in an omnibus edition called the Bachman books, the late Richard Bachman has been described as Stephen King without a conscience. Now he performs an eerie encore with the posthumous release of The Regulators, a harrowing story of a suburban neighborhood in the grip of surreal terror. It's a summer afternoon in Wentworth, Ohio, and on Popular Street, everything's normal. The paperboy is making his rounds. The Carver kids are bickering at the corner convenience store. A frisbee is flying on the Reed's lawn. Gary Soderson is firing up the backyard barbecue. The only thing that doesn't quite fit is the red van idling just up the hill. Soon it will begin to roll, and the killing will begin. A quiet slice of American suburbia is about to turn to toast. The mayhem rages are on a seemingly still point, a darkened house lit fitfully from within by a flickering television screen. Inside, where things haven't been normal for a long time, are Audrey Weiler and the autistic nephew she cares for, 8-year-old Seth Guerin. They're fighting their own battle, and its intensity has turned 247 Poplar Street into a prison house. By the time night falls on Poplar Street, the surviving residents will find themselves in another world, one where anything, no matter how terrible, is possible, and where the regulators are on the way. By what power they have come, how far they will go, and how they can be stopped. These are desperate questions, and the answers are absolutely terrifying. Good book! That would be a great book.
I know, that's like the broad strokes of that are what I like about the story, you know? Also, I wonder if he snuck the word regulators into his desperation blurb, you know?
Yeah, I'm actually curious about that. I could go grab it if you want.
We do that for the crossover.
No,
maybe.
I love too, like, just the he's really setting the stage of suburbia. It's like there's a guy barbecuing. Oh, you don't believe me? Okay, there's kids playing frisbee. How about now? Like, okay, we got it.
We got it, dude.
I mean, the darkened house lit fitfully from within by a flickering television screen. Like, I used to write blurbs when I was an editorial assistant. Mm-hmm. That's good. I would have been real proud of myself. Like, yeah.
And what's funny too, on the back cover they have the sort of the obituary for Richard Bachman too, and talks about how his wife discovered the manuscript, which I do like. I think it's so cool, like having the Richard Bachman, pseudonym.
The persevering myth of Bachman.
Do you guys have the same picture of Bachman?
Yeah.
At the piano? Yeah. Looks kind of like Stephen King a little bit.
Oh my God.
I do have photos where it doesn't look like me, like photos from when I was younger where I'm just kind of, and I'm like, I bet that's funny because I can see why he chose that fitter. Yeah.
I was going to say, it almost looks
at a piano, he's at a typewriter, right?
Oh, yeah. I guess I just assumed piano, yeah.
He's a typewriter and he's smoking a cigarette. Yeah. Like,
so
I wonder
funny.
if he thinks it looks like him. I bet he thinks it doesn't look like him.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. He's like, this is me without a conscience. Cool.
We should ask Tabitha what he looks like without a conscience.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's pop over and talk about some of the themes, quote unquote, in this book in a little section we call the hook.
Ah. Yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
Welcome to the hook. Let's talk, whereas Desperation, we had, an abundance of things to discuss about what that book is about, what King was trying to do, what he was reckoning with in his personal life. I think here, the actual point of this book, I think, is a little bit blurrier. I have a few things to discuss here, because he talks a lot about the idea of, these are two books about God. Desperation and Regulators are both about God. But, Desperation is about Old Testament God, and the Regulators is about the new God, the God of suburbia, the television. And I guess for me, I struggle with that concept because I think especially in the 90s, there was this worry because, TV, there was more TV than ever before, and kids were becoming obsessed with these franchises. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers are kind of the big ones that come to mind. And they were becoming, quote unquote, increasingly violent. So I think there was a lot of hand-wringing going on in culture around that time. And, this was around Beavis and Butthead time too. And obviously all the kerfluffle that arose around that show. So I guess I wonder if King is trying to make some comment about about TV in the 90s and its effect on children. So I have a few questions here that we can discuss. We already discussed sort of the Moto Cops and what they made you think of. That is the action franchise that Seth is watching. Brief reference to it in Desperation as well, but it's essentially a group of, futuristic soldiers who are fighting a villain called No Face, who is actually kind of creepy sounding. And probably would have scared me when I was young.
Sounds like Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget.
Yes.
You never see his
You're
face.
afraid of the claw.
And, but then we also see, but then also Seth is also obsessed with these old Westerns, specifically a fictional movie called The Regulators. And so, I don't know, why do we think King chose to combine these two things? This hyper-modern children's show that's set in the future and this old-timey Western that was made in the 1950s. Why do you think those are the two things that are converging in Seth's mind and on the street here in this suburb? What do you guys think?
Okay, I have a couple of thoughts. So if I look at how I think this relates to the overall theme of religion, I think, and I say this is not a big fan of the Western genre, so I'm not super versed in it, but it looks to me like a very kind of rigid social structure. There's a patriarchal kind of element to it, which I think kind of we see mirrored in a lot of religion, so I wonder if that it kind of dovetailed there. I think with they're not Power Rangers, Moto Cops, there's a very clear good and bad. So there's even though they're working together here, which I think I've got more thoughts about that with the overall theme, but I think I think I may have lost my train of thought, but yeah, I think those two things, I don't know if the two of them go together. There's also the permission to be violent in both of those genres, I think is what kind of connects
binds them together.
The unquestionable authority,
Yeah.
I want to weigh in on whether or not these are both about religion.
Yeah.
We talked about whether or not, Desperation was about, I'm still not certain that Desperation is about necessarily the Old Testament God.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not a religious scholar, and I know there's sort of the stereotypical thing, the Old Testament God is cruel and the New Testament God is more forgiving. I think there's some in both.
Yeah.
I think, as we discussed, Desperation is about God, for sure. I think this is about power.
Yeah.
And when power is not refining, when power and cruelty are not refining.
Yeah.
What happens when you just have the tack power, right?
Yeah.
Unbalanced by any kind of good, there is a kind of cruelty that's refining, and there's a kind of cruelty that just creates chaos and just is indulgent in cruelty for its own sake.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of what this is about. I think the term regulators is actually maybe intentionally interesting because one thing that children don't do is self-regulate, right? That's the defining aspect of being a child is the inability to regulate emotions, the inability to regulate your actions. An autistic child has a particularly difficult time regulating emotions. That's actually one of the trademarks of autism is the, need to do some kinds of self-regulation, self-soothing, stimming, that kind of thing. And so I think this is about when two forms of unregulated power come together.
Yeah.
And you get nothing but chaos and blood and shit.
Yeah. Lots of shit.
Yeah. No, I think it's funny how
and Boyardee also gross. Every description of that, just I was having to turn the page so fast. Squishy food grosses me out just in general.
Artificial orange,
it's funny because
chocolate milk
with X-Lax in it. There's a quaintness too to the idea of television being the god. It's television's gonna rot your brain, and now every kid has a Wi-Fi camera in his pocket that has access to every piece of media ever made. And it reminds me of the Shining film where Jack Nicholson's it's okay, he saw it on the television. There's a little bit of cynicism there. But I do remember in The Simpsons, they would be worshiping the television, and it was just sort of the the center of American families. It's let's get around and bask in the glow of our new god.
Yeah.
Looking back, it just seems a little, like I said, a little quaint.
Sure.
It's a little bit showing King's age, kind of.
Yeah.
This idea that television is going to be the boob tube, the whatever, the opiate of the masses, like religion.
Yeah.
And I do think King has a harder time with really incorporating like super modern technology into his novels.
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't like Cell. I enjoy Cell as one of his trippier, not as great books.
Right.
But it doesn't really truly grapple with like technology.
Right.
Right.
Tries to.
And it tries to. And again, his earnestness in that makes it sort of easier to take. But like, I think he's stuck in the television age. Like that is how he grew up. And he has a pretty subtle understanding of how TV works on us. But yeah, I don't. And this is a good book of its era in a way. Like this is a good picture of how people thought about television.
Absolutely.
In the mid 90s.
Yeah.
And that way it's kind of a snapshot or a snapshot of that particular moment of media criticism.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in suburbia. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also there's that legacy too of like, I mean, like the kid is watching an old Western on TV and there's a history of bringing Japanese stories into the Western genre, right? With like Seven Samurai and such. And even then like Power Rangers is a Japanese import, but it's funny to be like, oh, Moto Cops, like Power Rangers, and him trying to draw it back to like an old dusty Western TV show. It just doesn't quite get there for me.
I was going to say one about the why these two genres is that they're genre.
Yeah.
And it's true that children, not just autistic children, tend to love genre and tend to love like pop music because of the structure and the familiarity that you get. Like the Ramones kids love the Ramones.
Yeah.
Like, because it's all 3 minutes long or 2 minutes. And they sound a little bit alike. I mean, I love the Ramones too, but like they're definitely playing within a structure.
Right.
And I can see how, again, a child that had trouble self-regulating, the structures of these shows would be soothing.
Yeah.
Well, and I see kind of
I love Law and Order for the same reason.
Same here. Yeah. And I feel like when I look at religion in itself, like the structure of a service is very structured for that reason. Like when I look at organized religion and the purpose of it, it feels to me a lot of times of creating a structure and creating a world in which we navigate life. And to a certain extent with some religions, I'm not going to specify which ones, but like there is an element of like mass delusion needed or like mass kind of buying in that I feel like we get with television, And so I think like, and creating like these new, like these television is television our mythology? I think we talk sometimes about like arguing about would Freddie or Jason win a fight as if they're like real people that would ever actually do that, and I think maybe that's the connection that I see. And I kind of see it as like, what is the Twilight Zone episode? It's a Good Life, I think. Yeah, with the little boy.
Yep. I thought it was the monsters when the monsters come to whatever street. Isn't that the one where the kid has the power?
When I was doing my research, it was It's a Good Life. Yeah.
And I think of the Simpsons episode, honestly. But
very good. You did that thing, Bart.
Exactly. It's good. Oh, the carpet's on fire. And I think like that, if a really cold reading of kind of what I think he's struggling with in desperation is maybe I sense a lot of anger at God here, as if Tack is the God that he is raging against in this book. And I might be giving him a lot more credit, but that's kind of what I connected to it. And that also says a lot about kind of my own personal journey and where I am with it, which I'm not going to go into again, but
sure. Yeah. I think that's super interesting. And I think when I think about what you were saying, Ana, about that we're dealing with not the edifying cruelty, but rather the destructive cruelty, and we're dealing with a bad guy with no real counterbalance here. I guess my question is there a counterbalance? What represents good in this book is, because this is a world where it doesn't feel like there is a God in the traditional sense. And so I guess, like, does God exist here in, like, love? Is it relationships? Because ultimately it's Audrey it's Audrey and like sacrifice for Seth and everything that I think sort of saves the day. But what do you guys think? Like, is there a counterbalance to this evil, or is it just sort of a scramble, and if you're lucky, you can overcome the bad thing?
Yeah, I don't see much of a counterbalance. I had not thought about that, but even then, like, the love of a parent for their child is kind of going back to what Anna was saying, that it's like a structure there that we're all kind of familiar with, so it's easy to be like, oh yeah, love the kid, but
yeah,
it didn't convince me in the text that was like this prevailing good that could fight the power of talk.
Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily see good either. I do think, I agree. I think the strength in relationships, I think is maybe as much as we get, but some of these relationships are terrible and people are very, very mean to each other. So it's hard for me to see that as a selling point,
Yeah.
But
I found that kind of, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Well, I was just saying, I found this quote at the end of a long thing where Johnny is talking about addiction, but then, and this is kind of how I feel about the world here, it's on page 283, as some wise man or other once said, there is no gravity, the earth just sucks. And I kind of feel like that's like the worldview that I see here, which on my dark days, I'm like, fuck, I want to read a book where I can be mad,
Yeah. So, what were you going to say, Anna?
Yeah, just that, like, so Richard Bachman is Steve without a conscience, and also where he lets his misogyny just really run rampant. And the women in this book are just, like, I said this about Audrey Weiler in Desperation, which is that there's a certain kind of woman that King really hates, it seems like, which is like a woman that he sees as manipulative and like using her sexuality to like get stuff, which... yeah, women do, because that's the kind of power we're allowed.
Exactly. That's the game.
That's the game we play. And some people are more subtle than others. But I feel like throughout this book, he's sort of very like the affair that... I read this so fast. The affair that What's-Her-Face is having.
Yeah.
I agree. We maybe save it more for the combination episode coming up. But again, even more so, I had trouble keeping track of all the characters. I was constantly going online just to be like, wait, that's... just to verify the relationships and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think because I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about this idea of the counterbalance and whether there is like good here, but most of these characters are so nasty, and there's like, most of them are caricatures of like really shrill, or drunk suburban people, like it's a really cynical view of the suburbs, I think. And I think like the most level-headed one is the guy who moved there on a lark, Johnny, who like moved there from, the city or whatever to get away from things. And and I guess like I was thinking like, who's the good guy here? Is Audrey the good guy? Is Johnny the good guy? And, but it never really quite feels that way. Nobody really feels like heroes here, And I think that's probably the point, is that question of who is the hero in this world without a god, perhaps.
I want to just add that The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street is also a story about suburbia going
interesting.
bad. That's why I think my brain... the eyes clicked. It's when like this little boy thinks aliens have come, and it turns into a story about marijuana, about paranoia, which marijuana can cause.
That's true. Allegedly. I wouldn't know in Tennessee.
Yes. Anyway, so I guess I want to not be so embarrassed by my mix-up of Twilight Zone episodes.
Oh, no, but that's a good point. I mean, the thing was, King was mainlining the Twilight Zone, so I mean, I imagine a lot of... And this book feels very Twilight Zone-y in terms of the way that it evolved. So I think that a lot of those stories were probably bleeding into his head. And, I guess, like, I'm curious, too, though, does this book... Because there were so many condemnations of violence on TV back in the 90s. Like, everybody was like, TV's getting too violent. There's too many dirty words. There's too much sex. We're polluting our children's minds. And you mentioned that, we're dealing a little bit with kind of old man King here, and I was going to say earlier, this feels like one of the first books where I'm getting the vibe. Because now whenever I read King, and I love King, I love modern King too, but I always feel like I'm reading a book written by an old man. Like later, his new book, the main character is like a kid who goes from the age like 6 to like 15. And he has no clue how to write children anymore, at least in the sense of like slang and pop culture and the things that they engage with. He, like, the kid uses the phrase Maximo at one time to describe something that is, big. And so it's very funny to me.
Like when he says, I substitute Ethan Hawke for Rob Lowe, like I guess someone else pointed it out. I was like, oh yeah, way to go, Steve.
Now, hey, I love Ethan Hawke.
Oh, we all do, but that's not that's not the most in touch thing to do, perhaps. So
like, he wants a pat on the back for like being. I know the girls talk about Ethan Hawke now. See,
I've read Teen Beat. See,
yeah. I've seen Reality Bites.
I'm an EW columnist.
Yeah,
it's like she likes Ricky Schroeder.
Right.
And the thing is, like, of course, those references for King only they're deftly used when he's writing about the time periods he knows. And in those cases, it's grounding, it's interesting, it's a detail like that's really useful. Like I read something like Ross MacDonald, one of my favorite genre writers, mystery writers. He wrote about something about writing once where he talks about how in the one thing that separates good writing from so-so writing is specificity, right? Yep. So like he was a naturalist and a bird watcher. So in all of his like weird, like, private detective books, you get specific names of trees. Yeah. And that feels like when Stephen King is using popular culture well, like that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
This like flipping Ethan
flipping
Hawke
names,
and Rob Lowe, like it's just like clearly you're not doing something for specificity, you're doing it just to, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense. But I guess my question is like, do we think that is King clutching his pearls about violence on TV in this book? Or is he maybe using just the general discussion that was in the air as a means to tell his story about violence, about TV and violence and guns and toys? Do you guys have any opinion on that?
When was Golden Years?
Golden Years was before. That was like 3 or 4 years before this, yeah.
Like, I wonder, because there's just so much anger I feel when I'm reading this book. And so I think it's kind of shooting out in a lot of different directions. And I wonder if there's kind of an anger of like, this is what you want from TV. Like, why I tried to do TV and it's, so I wonder if there's a little bit there. The problem is like on writing, I think King talks about his themes and like, he'll write a rough draft and then he'll go back and see what themes emerged and then kind of dovetail it and pull it together. And I just don't feel like he did that in this book. I feel like there are themes present, but they're not fully fleshed out, or they don't, like, he just didn't go back and edit that part. So
yep, I agree with that. That's the thing, is I really had a hard, like, I love everything you guys have been bringing to the table, because honestly, like, you've crystallized a lot of things for me that I was reading this saying like, I have no idea what this is about, and the ties that you guys were making to sort of religion and television and all these other things I think are really smart, and obviously I'm just more in depth than me, because I found myself almost spiraling when I was reading this, because I'm just like, I don't know what he's trying to say here. And it's okay. Not every book needs to have the strongest theme or the strongest message. For me, this is really like a conveyor belt of murders, and really violent things. And for when I was a kid, that was enough. But now that I'm older, it's kind of like, I expect a little bit more, especially coming off Desperation, where I felt like, I couldn't stop myself from talking about it,
Like, I feel like a theme here is the unedited King, right? Because I don't feel like he did, like, Jen, like what you're saying, like he didn't go back through this and look for themes and just fucking like vomited it out or shat it out. And and he just was like, like, I'm just gonna do this. And I think some of the themes are unintentional, which is fine. It shows when he's kind of like playing around in his head. But again, I'll just go back to how one of the things that's always usually redeeming about even his not great stuff is that he's struggling with something.
Yeah.
He's like trying to work it out. Like, it's clear that he is like has an idea or has a problem in his head, and he's kind of writing around it and around it and around it, sometimes not knowing it. Like The Shining. Like The Shining's a great example of that. Yeah. And also I think, well, most of his, we could probably pick out the thing he's trying to work out in almost every one of his memorable novels.
Yeah.
I don't think he's working anything out here.
Yeah, I think he's trying to rage some stuff out.
Yeah, because I was thinking too. I was looking at the books that are coming up on the slate for this year, and I'm like, a lot of times you can perhaps see okay, well, maybe I can crystallize what was happening in one book by looking at what he wrote next, you know? And I can't really do that here. So it's like, because we got like Wizard and Glass, Bag of Bones, Girl That Loved Tom Gordon, like, and the thing, because I feel like with Bag of Bones especially, he's sort of retreating, he's kind of touching on themes that he was touching on before this, you know? And so it's, I'm not seeing like how the Regulators leads into this next book, which makes me, again, like we've talked about this concept of this book being a purging, like almost a bit of catharsis after you know, inviting and confronting a lot of his demons in desperation. This book just feels like a big vomit, you know, which isn't a bad thing.
I'm going to go with shit.
Yeah,
really
shit.
There's like a sliding helplessness to it or something. To quote
It's
later.
just, he's eliminating his waste.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pfleegor, what were you saying?
On that point though too, like it's, you think of it, you know, mid 90s as post Cold War, and kind of to your point, Randall, of not having necessarily the balance of good and evil. You know, once America kind of lost the great villain of the Soviets, we were looking for new villains, right? And it's what's on television. I mean, I remember being in church growing up and my priest saying Smashing Pumpkins were evil. And I was like, no, they're not.
I was going to say, y'all remember Tipper Gore?
Yeah.
I mean, she's literally the one that came out, though, against, I mean, I remember Frank Zappa had an instrumental album that they put a parental advisory on just as, you know, being righteous. But everyone was looking in the Clinton administration, whatever your politics are, you could say they were vilified in a lot of ways. It's like, oh, no, this is the new evil. Or Saddam Hussein is. That Adam Curtis documentary, The Power of Nightmares, talks a lot about this, how America was sort of struggling to find its villain that we could put all the evils of the world in. And I just think there was a period where, I mean, this evil certainly existed, but everyone was kind of looking in the wrong direction. And, you know, even now it's like, yeah, Beavis and Butthead at the time, I remember people protesting to get that off TV. And it's so timid. I mean, you know, I would show that to a child and not worry that they would go light gasoline on fire. You know what I mean? But at the time, though, it was like, oh my God, this is this great evil. MTV is so terrible. And there's like an innocence to this time period that looking back on, you're just like, oh, they didn't even know how good they had it.
Yeah.
I mean, people never thought of Power Rangers as being overly violent, though. Like,
yeah,
it's sort of funny to see what like I said, I don't think a ton of thought went into this.
Yeah. Like, I think he saw his kids, his grandkids or kids watching it, and you know, was like, "Wow, they're kicking each other a lot," you know, and I think he was probably just absorbing a lot of the dialogue that was happening. But yeah, I think those are great points, Pfleegor. And yeah, just super interesting. Let's pop on over and just talk briefly about this book. For me, like the use of autism here, I think is you know, I love what you were saying, Ana, about the idea of self-regulating, and that I think says a lot about it. But at the same time, you know, King, I think, has a habit, especially around this time, because we're going to talk about Dreamcatcher sometime soon as well, about, you know, he kind of moved on from the magical Negro, and now it's sort of, you know, the magical disabled person, you know? And I think that there is, you know, something troubling about that to some degree. He uses, you know, this person who is differently abled and the thing that they are afflicted with as, you know, that is like what protects them from tack, you know, in this weird way. And it fetishizes it, it magicalizes it in its own way. And it's something that, you know, didn't bother me when I read it when I was a kid, but now I just feel a little bit queasy about it. Did you guys have any similar reaction, or yeah, what do you think?
I'll say that just because I see the self-regulation theme or idea does not mean I'm defending that.
Oh, of course,
of that kid.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, it does not help people with disabilities when you make them magical in the same way that it's not good to, you know, make magical people of different races. Like it's so condescending, and I know he doesn't realize he's doing it, but it's just, I think he still doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The autism thing is my big issue with this. And, you know, I say that as when I was teaching, I worked with a lot of kids on the autism spectrum. And I feel like this is, like we said earlier, this is like a snapshot in time. I feel like this is a snapshot in understanding of autism, although I think maybe King is a little bit delayed on where even they were in 96. And Ana, I think the self-regulation thing, I think that holds up. I just don't think he realized it. Like, I don't think he understood that, but I do see that parallel, and I like that. I think there's a reading here that talk is autism, and that the autism is the evil thing that is invading Seth. And I really, really dislike that. Like that, you know, I don't think he was intentionally doing that, but I think there's a way to read that Audrey struggling with this child in her home is what a parent would go through struggling with a differently abled kid in their home. And I feel like it just feels very cruel, and not understanding, like the use of the word defective over and over and over again. And there's just really, really bad understanding of what kids with autism are like and act like, and there's no one thing. Like the saying is, if you've seen one kid with autism, you've seen one kid with autism, because every single person on the spectrum presents differently. And if the spectrum were bigger, we'd probably all be on it in some way. So it's just, and it's also like really still evolving. Like we're still kind of figuring out, there's just a lot that's not known about it.
And I feel like he sort of transplants some of the cliches about Down syndrome onto Seth, because the whole like, oh, but he's so sweet sometimes is like a thing that you hear people say about kids with Down syndrome, which I actually don't hear people say. I mean, sometimes having an autistic kid is hard.
It is.
It's really hard, and like not hard in the ways that it seems to be depicted here.
I have a line here pegged to what you're saying, Ana. So basically it's on page 104 of my Signet edition, and they're talking about how, it wasn't Seth though, not really. Not the Seth who had sometimes in the early days hugged them and given them brief open mouth kisses that felt like bursting soap bubbles. Owlboy, he would occasionally say while sitting in the special chair, words rising out of his usual unintelligible babble and making them feel, however fleetingly, that they were getting somewhere. I'm a cowboy. That Seth had been sweet, lovable, not just in spite of his autism, but partly because of it. That Seth had also been a medium, however, like contaminated blood which simultaneously nourishes a virus and transports it. And then leads into the discussion of Tack, how he's infested with that. But that general discussion of like lovable, not just in spite of his autism, but partly because of it, that's just made me think about what you were saying, Ana, about this, about these various stereotypes and this, I don't know, this sort of, I don't know how to phrase it. I guess just like defanging it in its own way, and not taking it seriously. So I don't know. It's thorny stuff, and it just seems like kind of a crutch in its own way too, which I think King has relied upon in a lot of his different books. And we're going to talk a lot about that with Dreamcatcher when we get there, obviously, because Duddits is a very problematic character. And I think just that general idea of using somebody's, disability as a crutch to sort of justify some kind of magical quality is something that, is an unfortunate habit around this time in his writing. So any other... go ahead, Jen.
Well, because I think there is a way to tell this story, because the one thing that I do kind of like, and I want to say that very carefully, is the idea of the autism being a barrier for communication, which I know is pretty true to life. But I think it's just so clunky and not handled well, because I feel like there's so much judgment attached to this condition of like using like sweet, but not sweet now when he's doing things that are out of his control. And I think there's a way to tell this story that I think could be really powerful and could, maybe help, but this is just not it. This arguably does more harm,
And I would say like this kid doesn't have to be autistic to tell this story.
No, he doesn't.
Like it could be just like a smart kid, and I just feel like he really doesn't know mental disabilities very well. Like
no,
I think he's really,
like
I do really think he's confused Down syndrome and autism. Like I literally think that he maybe is like,
this is like the stereotype of autism.
Yeah, and I think it's also just the unknown becomes magical, and that's the explanation for it.
Yeah, or to try to like put a bow on this, like, this thing is really hard for us to deal with, but it's magic, so
yeah, it's like he's autistic, therefore he knows how to play the piano, which growing up too, those are depictions you would see is like, oh, you're gifted in this area, which is not necessarily the case.
Right.
Like you were saying, if you met one autistic kid, you've met one autistic kid, which I've never heard it put like that. That's I like that.
Like I'm reading Dr. Sleep right now, and one thing I appreciate about it is Abra is like just a normal kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like just a normal kid with an ability, which is actually more like what a disability is. Is to be normal with this other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the other thing that makes it's different, but not like the thing. It's not like, okay, you're disabled, and then you get a thing to make up for it.
Right.
It's one thing that has
Right.
both good and sometimes not, not as good things that go with it. Anyway.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
I feel like
Any other themes that you guys want to discuss? Any other ideas that we didn't touch on in this book that that you think deserve discussion?
I want to mention one thing. I don't know if it's really a theme I see, but if we're talking about suburbia, like I don't think it was intended this way, but I appreciate the element of racism in this book because I know that that is heavily baked into the idea of suburbia and we don't talk about it. So I think it feels like skewering suburbia in a way that I find like pretty honest in a lot of ways, even though I didn't enjoy reading it. You know,
Sure.
I thought that scene was actually one of the better ones in the book where that woman whose name, again, all the characters.
Right.
Too many.
Is it Kim? I think it's Kim.
Yeah. It, like goes, all like alt-right on,
Brad.
Belinda, I think.
Belinda.
Brad
And
Melinda,
also
yeah.
non-magical Negroes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, woohoo! I feel like that's what we get to celebrate, that when King like manages to just have them be people.
He still
Yeah.
he still leers over them though. Like some of
he's
the
real mean
language.
to him.
Well, just like
Yeah.
but just the language, like he can't talk about them without mentioning they're black, which is often kind of frustrating. But
Yep.
I do agree that it's so
And
nice.
their bodies get a lot of attention.
Their bodies
Oh.
get a lot of attention.
in which his white characters don't always get like the kind of like
Yep.
almost
Yeah.
pornographic.
Yep. I think I have that in some of my misery later, but
Me too.
Hi, I'm Jen. I love watching horror movies. I also have PTSD and I go to a lot of therapy.
I'm Lara. I have anxiety and depression and love having the shit scared out of me. Wait, what?
I'm Mike. I'm a therapist, and I love talking about horror movies and mental health.
We love horror films for how much they scare us and for how much they help us.
Because we love talking about mental health, aka how crazy we are, and the role the horror genre can play in our self-care, we started a podcast called Psychoanalysis.
Every episode, we talk about a movie and how it relates to a different topic in mental health and wellness. Whether it's a deep dive or a shorter episode in a movie that makes us feel all warm and fuzzy.
But not in a weird way.
Unless we're talking about hot horror sweaters, because then it is very weird.
True.
Very weird.
Our episodes drop every Thursday on the Consequence Podcast Network. Listen to find out
How horror
can heal.
But yeah, I think in the spirit of moving on, let's move on to our next section, structure and format.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
Welcome to Structure and Format, the section of the pod where we discuss the structure and format of a book. And this one, there actually is a good chunk to discuss here that I think is interesting. And this is sort of a Bachman trick that is also in some King books, specifically Carrie. But the idea of rounding out the narrative with scraps of correspondence, or just documents, And here he actually has a lot of fun, I think, with the supplementary documents. We get a script from the Motocops, we get script pages from the Regulators, and we also get letters written from a guy in desperation who kind of breaks down what happened to Seth and how he was possessed. And we get letters, the end of the book plays out with a character we've never met before, essentially seeing the ghost of Audrey and Seth. And that's sort of how the book ends. And we get a little drawing as well. Sweet little ending. And then, I have another couple things to discuss too, but do you guys like that supplementary sort of thing? Because King has pulled it in a couple books, and then obviously he's used it in some of the Bachman books as well. Is that a thing that you enjoy?
I love it in Carrie.
Yeah.
I think it's sparing here. Also, I will say my audiobook did not include some of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we didn't have the screenplay section.
Oh, wow.
I think it's okay. Like, it's I appreciate it usually, like when authors kind of do this. I also think he does it in Salem's Lot, I think, pretty well too.
Yep.
There's one place where it really did not work, and
Yeah.
also a continuity problem, which is in my book, page 195, where it's the drawing from Seth, and then he has it signed. He has an explanation for it signed by editor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, editor, is this book exist in the real world then?
Right.
And like you have an actual drawing, and Richard Bachman somehow got possession of a drawing and he's telling the truth about a thing that happened, or like, do you know what I mean? Like it's like, who editor who?
Like that implies like a found footage element or something.
Yeah,
you know?
Which is just to put it in there. You don't need to tell me like you don't need to have an
talk
editor.
Or something. Yeah.
It's just a funny like little like he forgot whether or not it was found or if it's just a part of the book. So
yeah,
like not edited. Oh, and so ironic because the theme of this podcast is unedited King, and an editor would have caught this,
right?
Or said, "Hey, build this up," you know,
or just like put it in the novel. Don't like you don't have to explain why it's there. Nothing else is explained. Like this was found.
Right.
Editor without a conscience. But it was fun. So in the audiobook too, whenever they reference the like the diary entries, I would switch back to the actual paper book, which I it's visually it's interesting to see like kind of the scripted out diary, and it reminded me of the book House of Leaves, if you guys ever read that.
Yeah,
which just kind of gets playful with like the text and how it's presented. So I don't know, it's an interesting experiment. I don't think that it really works here or adds much, but I appreciate again the attempt on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say the scripts we get for Motocops and for the Regulators.
No editor.
The scripts we get don't really add much aside. I think he was using them as a means to help us better visualize the Motocops and to visualize the Regulators, since they are like such important parts, especially visually. But I have to say that I reread them a couple times because I felt like I maybe was missing something deeper, and I just don't think it's there. So
I'm always curious with those two, though, like the publisher, if they kind of roll their eyes where they're like, oh great, this is going to be a hassle to like get this out.
Oh, but
printed.
he's going to sell a cajillion copies, so
I mean with him, hey,
I'll be spared.
It's art.
Front the money for him, but they're just like, oh god, there's like 30 pages of these diaries.
Those screenplays actually kind of almost, I mean, like I said, I sort of just like pastiche, so I'm okay with it. But I actually, specifically on the screenplays, I'm like, yeah, why am I, like, what are you telling me about this show that I'm not getting from people describing it?
Yep.
You know?
I don't feel like I missed the story because I didn't have that, you know?
Like, if it would be interesting, like, if, like, one way to make it interesting would be, like, if they changed the script. Like, you have the script, and then all of a sudden, like, it's Seth's version of the script or something.
Yeah.
Like, the story actually changes. But instead it's just like a not very good episode of Motocops, you know?
Yeah. I totally agree.
I have a complaint too.
Okay, bring it.
In my book, in those sections, there's not page numbers, and that drove me crazy. Like when I was doing notes, I had to write in page numbers, and I don't know if this is gonna, like, I feel like I'm like old man yelling at cloud, but the writing in the last section is really small. And I was like, what is this? Anyways, otherwise,
there's not page numbers in the first edition either for those.
Yeah, whenever there's like the diary or the script, like I was trying to, I'm always jumping ahead to be like, how many pages do I have to go? And at the end, I was like, having to estimate. I'm like, well, I guess that's 20 pages of diary.
But there's no way to know.
But to Ana's point too, it might maybe if like, if it would have switched over to like his penmanship or kind of they played with that a little bit. But there really wasn't a need to have it printed like that.
Right. It's not like Misery, where like you see the letters and that is really cool and amplifies the story, you know?
Yeah. So definitely, it feels like, I don't know, a dash of, like quirkiness or character for no real reason, and so I wish I liked it more because I do think that can be really effective. Like I'm similar to you, Ana, in that I like pastiche. I like when, like, I remember when I was writing a thing when I was in college, I thought it was so cool that I was adding, like I was writing a story and I had AIM conversations like written in to like break up certain things. I remember thinking that was so clever on my part. And I think I was inspired in part by Regulators. So I can give the book credit for that. But and then the other kind of note I had about structure and format was that I thought was actually kind of neat, but it could get a little chaotic was like mere seconds, like 3 or 4 seconds play out over like 10 pages, like at certain parts of this book. Like, just, you know, when one character is like, I think when they're attacked, like by the mountain lion and stuff like that, I feel like we're leaping between so many different perspectives to cover this 3 or 4 seconds. And I'm a little bit mixed on it because part of me thinks that's fun. Like I kind of like seeing the different angles and everything. But at the same time, I'm like, I get it. The thing is killing him. Like, I need to move on from this section. Like, I think this book is so belabored in a lot of ways. I mean, it's kind of amazing that it, like, I remember being shocked when I picked it up and it was this thick, you know, which isn't even that thick, but that's pretty thick. And because I didn't remember Regulators being this long. And it's not as long as Desperation, obviously. But to me, it's like, I don't need that much. This book is like, we talk a lot about his books being overwritten or just being like stretched out like taffy, but this one for me is almost criminally so.
And I think there are places where I do really like that. Like at the end, I like how it's Talk's time, Talk's place, Seth's time, Seth's place. Like, I think he does a pretty good job of distinguishing the action. Like the characters know, but like I generally have a good understanding of what's happening. It's just that the same thing kind of keeps happening.
Right.
I think it's just that we don't need it in every single thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I just don't need to have every perspective sometimes, you know?
Right.
There's just too many damn characters.
Yep.
Which, you know, when I was young, I really liked that aspect because I loved ensembles, but this is an instance where not every character is contributing equally. So, you know. Yep. Any other thoughts on structure and format about the way this one is laid out? Otherwise, we can pop in and talk about those characters that I was just mentioning. All right, I think that is a sign that it is time to move on to our heroes and innumerable villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
Hero and Heroes and Villains, we discuss the various characters, but because we don't want this podcast to be 7 hours long, we are not going to discuss every character in this book. So we're each going to kind of go around and talk about what characters stood out to us. And yeah, Jen, do you want to kick it off? What is a character that you think is maybe rises above the rest a little bit?
Well, I don't know if I want to talk about Johnny, but I feel like that is a more interest. Like, I feel like my thoughts on Johnny are maybe in comparison to Desperation Johnny, but the character I think I really found myself coming back to was Ralphie, the little boy. And it could be just because I have a son that age, but just like the journey that kid is put through in this book, like really touched me and made me kind of think about like a lot. Like he starts as just being this totally whiny brat, and totally indulged by his parents. Like the element of like, he's the clear favorite of the kids. Like, and I mean, there's part of that is like, it's just having kids, you know, but, I liked seeing that through Ellen's eyes. And then I liked I didn't like it. I found it interesting and compelling how he is just kind of broken by watching his parents die. And some of what I found, like, it was really hard to read, but I found like a lot of sympathy for him. Like there's this passage where he talks about the behavior for like the next 10, 20 years is going to be shaped by this moment, which like in my own therapy, thinking about some of my old memories of my childhood, like I didn't get attacked by Power Rangers, but like just thinking about how those things affect the rest of your life and the way like this poor kid is going to have to deal with this with both his parents gone, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I thought I was looking forward to see Kali and Trajan again, because especially there's a scene where, you know, he's no longer a police officer, but he sort of operates as if he is one. And there's that moment where he's kind of like, oh, do I tell them in this split second? And I did some work legally back in the day about officers operating under color of law and like what that entails. So while I was reading that, I was like, oh yeah, he's a former police officer, but if he's acting like he's technically breaking the law, but you can see that moral dilemma where he still thinks of himself as a cop.
Yeah.
And I have a lot to compare it next episode. But I thought he was a little more fleshed out, I guess, than Desperation. And, you know, he's kind of disgraced cop, seen better days. Hated to see him go in this one. Whereas, I don't know, not my favorite character. There really wasn't a character that I felt super attached to. It was more just seeing like the twinning aspect. I wanted more from it, but Kali jumped out.
Now,
to
are
me.
we saving discussion of how the characters
complement each other
for the next episode?
I think we can save most of that discussion, but if you have sort of a broad level, comparison, I think that's fine to mention here. It's hard to separate them.
I think it's interesting, like that Johnny, I think, is the only character that has it's sort of the same.
Yeah.
In both, like literally has the same job.
Yeah.
Right. And then also, it's not so much a different person as like the different path taken.
Yeah.
You know, for the same exact guy, just a different path taken. And then actually, I thought I might be alone in Collie and sort of being interested in Collie, because a few things. One is that it's a rare cop character for King who's complicated and not just evil or good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I did have one laugh, I'm just going to say, where Carrie Ripton is thinking about, they all think that he killed a kid, like that's the rumor, or like how he got disgraced. And Carrie says to himself, if he killed a couple kids, how come he's not in jail? Oh boy.
How sweet.
What color were those kids? I wonder. He didn't actually kill the kids either, right? Like that's the story.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like that he's not. Yeah, I like that he's not just deranged, which a lot of King's cops are just deranged.
Right.
And he's not completely good either. The other character that's basically the same as Steve.
Yep.
And also, what's her face?
Cynthia. Yeah, there's really not much difference.
It's interesting
there.
to me that like those are the continuity characters. I think that those are also the ones he likes.
Yep, I got that vibe too.
And they're the ones I like in this book, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, like Steve gets some great little lines, and he's like it's funny, actually, because Steve in this is less responsible than he is in Desperation, and then Johnny is more responsible than he is in Desperation. So, anyway.
I have a question about Steve. How old did you think he was in Desperation? Do you think he's the same age in here and in Desperation? Because for some reason, I was reading him as like 20 years older in Regulators versus Desperation, but I feel like I might be alone in that. I had him like, I envisioned him as like an old gray-haired hippie, like in Regulators for some reason.
Yeah. I see him as that in Desperation as well. I see him as a guy that like is sort of probably how King doesn't see himself, but should. Which is a guy who's really into rock and roll.
Yeah.
You know, and then like kind of ages out of it. Without not realizing he's aged out of it.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that's always bothered me about his relationship with Cynthia, right? Like, because she's whatever, like early 20s or something.
Right. Maybe that's why I always pictured him as younger in Desperation, because they play up the romance between them more in Desperation. So I think I always saw him as like maybe in his late 30s or something, or mid 30s. And I know Steven Weber plays him in the miniseries, so it's like I guess I envision him as Weber-esque. But here it was really hard to avoid the hippie vibes and like the idea that he's got like Willie Nelson hair or something. So, but I enjoyed him. I think Steve's great. Yeah, I do agree. I think the characters that are perhaps most compelling, aside from Collie, because Collie was like my favorite too, and I'll talk about that in a second, but the ones that to me were most interesting were the ones who kind of carried that continuity, because I felt like I was learning like you mentioned, Ana, it was like the road, the other road that was taken, you know, and I think that's a really interesting sort of way to look at it. Like if Steve, you know, turned the wrong corner and ended up in this suburb in Ohio.
I almost wish that that's what he had done with every character.
Yeah.
That had been basically the same, but just like different choices made.
Yeah.
And anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think, and we'll talk more about that in our next episode about this, but yeah, Collie to me, I think, and it is hard to separate it from the other character, because I think like you, Pfleegor, I felt like I was perhaps we never saw human Collie in Desperation. We only saw the possessed version. And so in a way, I felt like I was seeing Collie, but I envisioned him as older too in Regulators. So I saw him as maybe 20 years older than he was in Desperation. And as, you know, having been through the ringer and was this sort of disgraced cop. And he had like a dimension to him that we didn't get in Desperation. And I think I was drawn to that. And like you mentioned, Ana, it is sort of a fresh view of a cop in at least up to this point in King's Oeuvre. And so, but yeah, and I found myself really drawn to him. And like you, Pfleegor, I was really sad when he died, because I was like, he was the character I was kind of most invested in a lot of ways, because I don't know, there was dimensionality to that character. character. And I think a lot of that had to do with how we got so much discussion about how the rest of the community views him, because the kids are all scared of him and everybody is kind of like, what's that guy's deal? And he was also the one taking the most agency once everything started happening. So I think I was drawn to him for that reason, whereas a lot of the characters are just kind of there and being scared and hiding in people's houses. And I think that, constitutes a lot of the, evolution of the other characters. I want to talk more about Peter, Mary's husband, he's a professor in this and basically learns that his wife, he watches his wife get murdered, and then he finds out she was cheating on him, I believe, and then basically becomes like a human, energy source for Tack, and then is kind of sent off into the woods to wander. And that section to me is probably my favorite of the entire book. I kind of love Peter's little arc, but because I remembered it from when I was a kid, but rereading it, I was shocked at how little character he actually has. Like, he kind of just gets strung through the ringer, but there's no there in terms of who he was. So I was a little disappointed by that, because I remember being like very into that journey. So he's less of a character for me than he is a denizen of the cemetery, which we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, any other thoughts on character? I mean, the wild thing is there's so many, but there's so little development that it's like there's really not a ton to discuss. But Jen, did you have something else?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Audrey and the relationship with Talk, because I do think that's maybe one of the more compelling stories I found. Like, I think it's clunkily handled as the entire book is, but I think it's a really interesting portrait of like an emotionally and physically abusive relationship, and being trapped, and not being trapped physically, but like being trapped by these bonds, whereas like you're gonna be punished if you leave the house, and don't you dare leave me, and like humiliation, and the fact that he wants to fuck her, and which I thought was really interesting, because Talk can enter people, like he can do that. So it's not that he wants to enter her, it's he wants to subject her to this.
He wants to rape her.
Exactly. Yeah. This humiliating thing. He wants to punish her in that way, which I found really disturbing and off-putting. But her responses to that, I think I found kind of endearing, and just, I mean, I don't know. I think it's done better in a lot of his other books, but I did enjoy that story. That's probably the through line that I found through the book,
So it's funny, because I think one of the things that we've talked about with King and his portrayal of abusive relationships is he usually has trouble showing why people stay, right? And the good reason, not the affection that you can have for your tormentor. And he sort of accidentally does that here. Like, because he literally turns it into a split personality. But anyone who's been in an abusive relationship, it's not really a split personality. It is actually the same person, but there's a part of them that you love, and then it's bound up just inextricably with the person that torments you.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting way that's funny that King gets there with this, where his other abusive relationships, he seems not to be able to portray that part of them that is why you would want to stay.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to say something about Peter, because I actually had a laugh out loud moment with Peter, which is on my page 279, although no one else is 279. He's been possessed by Tack, and he's in his house, and there's sort of like a little bit of this reflection on who he used to be, how Tack is completely like all of who was Peter is no longer there. He says, he had been working on a scholarly article called James Dickey in the New Southern Reality, relishing the thought that it would stir a great deal of controversy in certain ivied bowers of academe. He might be invited to other colleges to be on panel discussions. Panel discussions to which he would travel with all expenses paid. And then, so it goes on for a bit. And there's, he passed the patio on a diagonal, striking the edge of the table with his hip as he walked by. An issue of Verse, Georgia, and several of his research books fell off the stack and landed in a puddly pink brick. Peter ignored them. His fading sight was fixed on the greenbelt, which ran behind the houses on the east side of Poplar Street. His almost lifelong interest in footnotes had deserted him. I did a audible laughter.
Yeah. No, that is super
escaped
funny.
me on that.
I think poking a little fun at the life of the academia is.
Well, and also just the nostalgia I think I have for panels.
Yeah.
Once we went to panels.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, along what you were saying about Audrey as well, I think something that that helped me sort of understand the struggle too was just the disrepair that the house was falling into. The idea that it was becoming like, filthy, that there was mess everywhere, that things were piling up, just the mess of it all, I think. And that, I think, relates in some ways to, the revulsion of it, the idea of the Chef Boyardee and the milk and everything just like congealing everywhere. It's disgusting, but it also, I think, sets, it speaks to a sense of being trapped, and it speaks to a sense of depression and, a general inability to, activate yourself in this sort of time. And and I felt like that was really effective too, and it made me sympathize with her. I think she was probably the one I sympathized with most throughout this one. So yeah, glad we discussed her. Go ahead.
I feel like we don't ever really, like Collie in Desperation, get a sense of who she really is.
Right.
Like I was thinking, what would her house look like, and how horrible that would be to have to live like that and have no control. Because that's just kind of a manifestation of the inward feelings, and I don't know if I want to go into the part where she goes into the bathroom to release it in a manual way. But I just think there's like that, that's a lot of pain that she's carrying. And,
Yeah. Cool. Any other characters you want to touch on before we immerse ourselves in our own bath of misery?
Doc is also basically the same.
Yeah, well, he just struck me as a little bit less self-destructive in this one.
Yeah, not as I don't think he's an alcoholic.
Right.
This one.
Yeah.
But he's a veterinarian with a picture of a corgi on his wall.
I did like the little animals that popped up. I wonder if King was he probably had his first corgi by that point.
Counting corgis, yeah.
Which I believe was named Bill. Something we learned recently during a round of trivia with the listeners. Cool. Well, let's move on to a section we call Misery.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Annie!
Here in Misery, we discuss the stuff that made us miserable in this book, and I think there's a handful of it. I'll kick us off. I have to say that just the way that King writes, like, I agree with the idea that at least the black people in this book are not magical, but phrases like this just make me cringe a little bit. So this is on page 8. At the top, on the western corner of Poplar and Bear Street, is 251 Poplar. Brad Josephson is out front, using the hose to water the flower beds beside the front path. He is 46, with gorgeous chocolate skin and a long, sloping gut. Ellie Carver thinks he looks like Bill Cosby. A little bit, anyway. Brad and Belinda Josephson are the only black people on the block, and the block is damn proud to have them. They look just like the way people in suburban Ohio like their black people to look, and it makes things just right to see them out and about. They're nice folks. Everyone likes the Josephsons. And I understand we're filtering this through the lens of Ellie, who is a child here. But I do think that it's just really hard for King to write about black people in this book, specifically them, without it coming across as kind of weird. Like, he just kind of emphasizes certain things in really aggressive ways. And he basically can't mention either of them without mentioning the fact that their skin is black. So,
yeah. I don't think he's aware of his bias.
Yeah.
He's kind of othering often in this book.
Yeah. And it makes me cringe a lot. It's something I think that didn't bother me when I was young, similar to the autism. But now that I'm older, I'm kind of like, that's just a little bit cringy. So, yeah. Go ahead, Jen.
Well, I was gonna say, in some of because mine was an abridgment, the audio, that some of that is what they cut out. Like, I would notice a sentence about like Belinda talking about the black experience. Like the sentence in that paragraph was not in the Audible book. So I wonder if somebody was reading it, I was like, I don't.
Hey, Steve, you mind if we cut these lines? Or maybe even Steve went through and he's like, oh, that doesn't hold up.
Yeah, the Prince of South Africa, I think, is not in my Audible version either, which was like,
I've referenced this many times because it's my least favorite part of the book, but the grossness of, and maybe that's actually, for some people, that would be a plus, because it is a really vivid depiction of filth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess there's just part of me, it would really disturb me to be in that environment, and I maybe didn't need it described in quite the way detail it was as many times as it was. I think this is another place also where King is really proud of himself as far as like Tack wanting to leave when Seth shits.
Yeah.
Like he thinks like that's probably like a really like, I mean, that's the plot twist of the book. That's actually the
right.
thing that I actually remember from when I first read it thinking like, really? Like this is like the big twist. Like this, what you're planting here is the plot twist.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Especially
like,
given how comfortable he seems in filth, it seems kind of odd that it's like, oh, that's what would trigger Tack to like escape.
And it's like, so bad people are upset by bodily functions, like evil. Like, it's sort of a funny thing. Like, why would Tack not be okay with shitting?
Right.
Like, he seems more,
especially living in filth. That was the other thing that I was like, they're living in filth.
Right. It's like if he was obsessive with cleaning and keeping everything pristine, then it would sort of make sense. But I'm kind of, again, it's like, you got rotten Chef Boyardee here, dude. So I don't know, going to the bathroom is going to be much worse. I think also in this, the thing I didn't like, I think we covered a lot in the other sections, but this book feels there's like a patchwork nature where I think a lot of ideas that King had kind of kicking around for a while, he just sort of threw them all into this. Because there's a lot of directions where, I'm like, wait, this is what this book's about? Oh, wait, no, it's turning to this. And, it feels like multiple... I think Jen said, like, maybe this would work better as a short story. Like, I would have almost rather just seen the experience within the household for Tack, as a, less than 100 pages versus an entire novel with all these additional characters. The misery for me, I guess, was just getting through the whole thing. I appreciate it. I like the twinning aspect, but
the misery was reading it.
Yeah, it's not my favorite.
My big misery. I remember reading this in high school, and there were two things that I remember, and one is in my cemetery section and the other is in my misery, and it is the fact that Mary Jackson dies with her legs open, and we keep hearing about people talking about her not wearing underwear. There's a Willie Nelson joke that I do not appreciate. There's a bearded clam reference that is just, and it's just so slut shaming and so gross, and that's the thing. Like, I didn't remember anything about this character except the way she dies. And that's the Bachman, I think, coming out that we were talking about earlier, of really punishing his female characters. And that's all we get,
And doesn't one guy save it for like the spank bang
for
kind
future
of?
consideration,
it's like,
or
a dead woman, right?
Yeah, it's a dead woman.
Like,
You wouldn't...
I actually also, the jokes about it really bothered me. And that, and I've referred to it earlier, like he really has a distaste. He slut shames, actually. And that is the shorthand for it. Like King just does that all the time. And I think the fact that it's so Peter doesn't know, and that's so humiliating for him. Yeah. Is really kind of like...
Well, and for him as her husband, not for her because she's dead. So there's no way, like she's lost all agency,
Right. And also the fact that she's having an affair is supposed to be just this utterly like, like Peter, oh, poor Peter, his wife is having an affair, like the cuckold sort of idea. It makes it all about him.
Right. Yeah. Is it worse that she was having an affair or that she died,
Yeah. Yeah, along those lines, I mentioned this earlier, but it just kind of drove me crazy how much, like, in the middle of all, like, this is near the end of the book, like, everything's going on. Susie and her mom, Susie's the teen girl on the block, basically... they're in the midst of this firestorm. They're watching their friends die. This is when Kim, Susie's mother, gets really racist. And she says, Susie, you get over here. We're going away from these hateful people. And then it says, Susie turned her back on her mother, trembling all over. So she's taking this defiant stand against her mother. But then the narrative pivots so that Johnny can comment and say, Johnny supposed this did not change his opinion of the girl as a shallow, flighty creature, but she seemed a link or two up the food chain from her mother, at least. And that's just one of many things where, like, Susie is made fun of by multiple men in the book for being, like, upset and like crying and, you know, perhaps being shrill in the midst of a very horrible, traumatizing, bloody situation. And it just seems so mean, like these grown adult men piling on this teen girl who is in the midst of trauma. It's just really bizarre for me. And I remember it just standing out as like aggressively misogynistic. So it's and I think that obviously ties to what you guys are saying about Mary, which is just you know, morbid in such like an unnecessary way, like, you know, this morbid humor, quote unquote, that is so unnecessary. So it's a very, and again, it speaks to the idea that this is just a very mean and ugly book, which it was intentional, but that doesn't necessarily make it, you know, edifying or artistic. So
I meant to mention this when we were talking about whether or not this book is about God, which is that he does do his almost, you know, required in every book swipe at fundamentalists.
Yeah.
Which he never, it's so ham-fisted, like every time, you know, he talk about like disrespect, like he never seems to grant the idea that these people may have a sincere relationship with God, or that there may be something in their lives that like this is a wholesome or not, or whatever. He always portrays them as cynical, always portrays them as like bigots of some sort, and they're just really, I don't know.
You're talking about the Hortons, the family? Yeah. I thought that was interesting, and I probably will have more to say about that in our next crossover episode. But I like when we were talking about not having a villain in the 90s, there's no counterbalance. Like I think the real villain or the real counterbalance is like self-reflection, you know, and I think that he's just really highlighting these characters' inability to do that, but it is very broad and very like judgmental the way that it rolls out, you know.
I'll say one that I also love it, but I also hate it. Is I forget who it is, but it's chapter 11. But they say my mom was having a cow, a rather large one. As a huge Simpsons fan, and also in the 90s, where it's like everything's like, you know, the Simpsons was the coolest, and I love pop culture references sometimes. I also hate them, but I don't know. It just, that's the part that I laughed out loud. I was like, I can't believe I've never heard anyone say having a cow and mean it other than Bart Simpson.
Bart Simpson.
Right. And rather a large one.
A rather large cow she's having.
You know. One of the things that I did not like also is all of the shit. And we talked about how that is a plot point. And so that leads itself to just being present, which I don't like. And it's hard for me to forget about that as I'm reading the rest of the scene, like this really sweet moment with Audrey and Seth at the end. Like he has mentioned, he's covered in shit, and it's just really hard for me to forget that. And there's a scene in the second Dark Tower book where a character is naked the whole time, and it's just really hard for me to get that idea out of my mind. And this was another one. I was like, I don't need all this shit talk. Figure something else out.
Dan Caffrey loves the pee-pee and the poo-poo, so.
Well, I apologize, Dan, but it's not quite for me. Oh, and there's a moment at the end where Cynthia is yelling at Cammy, who's just killed them, and she's like saying, "This is not going to bring your son back. Didn't you go to school?" Like,
I know.
What the fuck is that?
It's so weird.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all mine.
Let's cleanse our palates a little bit in a little section we call Word Processor of the Gods.
And we're going to make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, whether the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
Here in Word Processor, we read some of the better bits of prose. We read stuff that we enjoyed, that we thought was a bit of good writing. And so I guess in this one, the good section stood out to me a little bit more because there wasn't a lot of beautiful writing in this one. But and even some of the writing I have isn't beautiful, but perhaps striking. I thought this section where Peter... page 195 of my Signet edition, Peter is holding his dead wife in his arms, and I think this paragraph does a great job of depicting sort of the chaos that is erupting all around them, like with a moment of stillness at the center of it, and also just playing up the idea of how fast this all happened. And so yeah, I'm going to read this. On the lawn of Old Doc's house, Peter Jackson stands with his wife in his arms, woundless at the center of the firestorm. He sees the vans with their dark glass and futuristic contours. He sees the shotgun barrels, their muzzles belching fire. And between the silvery one and the red one, he can see Gary Soderson's old shitbox Saab burning in the Soderson driveway. None of it makes much of an impression on him. He is thinking about how he just got home from work. That seems like a very big deal to him for some reason. He thinks he will begin every account of this terrible afternoon. It has not occurred to him that he may not survive this terrible afternoon, at least not yet, by saying, "I just got home from work." This phrase already has become a kind of magical structure inside his head, a bridge back to the sane and orderly world which he assumed only an hour ago was his by right and would be for years and decades to come. I just got home from work. So I enjoy. Yeah, I love that section because it really just kind of grounds the action for a moment and allows these people to be humans in the midst of a violent supernatural event for just a moment. So anybody else have moments of prose that perhaps stood out to them as positive?
I like that section too, and I want to say it's one of the few times where we get the sense that the author likes his characters or has sympathy for his characters. Like something that I wrote down, I mean, right away, like the way the book opens for the most part, the contempt for suburbia that just like drips like from the prose, like this, I don't know, like again, that's sort of a theme with King. He doesn't like that. Yeah. But there's weirdly one of my favorite sentences in the whole book, and I think it's like a really cool sentence, is he's describing the street. This is a long sentence. Jesus. Actually, you know what? It's one sentence. I just realized this. Oh my God. It's the whole... I'm going to read the whole paragraph because it is one sentence.
Go for it.
Oh, wow.
It's the very first paragraph in the book. Summer's here, not just summer either, not this year, but the apotheosis of summer, the avatar of summer. You quoted some of this. The high green, perfect central Ohio summer, dead smash in the middle of July, white sun glaring out of that fabled, faded Levi's sky, the sound of kids hollering back and forth through the Bear Street woods at the top of the hill, the tink of little league bats from the ball field on the other side of the woods, the sound of power mowers, the sound of muscle cars out on Highway 19, the sound of rollerblades on the cement sidewalks and smooth macadam of Poplar Street, the sound of radios, Cleveland Indians baseball, the rare day game, competing with Tina Turner belting out Nutbush city limits, the one that goes 25 is the speed limit, motorcycles are not allowed in it, and surrounding everything, like an auditory edging of lace, the soothing, silky hiss of lawn sprinklers.
Yeah.
That last part is just really beautiful writing.
Yeah.
And true, and very true feeling.
He's always very good at setting up sort of the, I don't know, like the place, you know, the town, like the street, whatever. Like he does that in Needful Things too, and also in different seasons, I believe. He's just very good at sort of establishing place and the little things that sort of make up what makes a street special or something, or even a yard.
The auditory edging of lace is the thing that I...
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
I like that line too. He does a good job of setting up that sort of Americana feeling. You know, it reminds me of like The Sandlot or something. I just don't think it ever gets back to that point again. You know, it's familiar.
And then he dives into the contempt, like the next paragraph.
Yeah. Pfleegor, did you have any good sections you wanted to share?
Yeah, you actually got my quote, but there's one that I like, going back to pop culture references, and it's more King paraphrasing, but it says, "When there's no more room in hell," this artifact said, "the dead will walk the earth," which of course is the tagline from Dawn of the Dead from George Romero. So I just always thought that's a great thing. And when I was a little kid, you know, seeing hell was like a curse word, so it was just funny to be like, oh, hell is full, so the dead are going to walk the earth.
That's actually a pop culture reference that works, I think.
Yeah, and the fact that one of my favorite quotes is pretty much something King didn't say speaks to how few quotes in this book that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I've got one other one here that I really love, and this sort of overlaps with Cemetery for me a little bit, because one of the things I actually find really effective in this book is when the world begins to sort of resemble like a child's drawing. And the idea that humans are existing within that is a creepy concept to me. I don't think he fully exploits it as well as he could have, but I think that general concept that things are manifesting in this world as they would in a child's mind. And that's really cool. So this is the section I thought perhaps did it best. I believe it's Steve and Collie are walking through sort of the woods and they're transforming into the desert. So it's on 272 of my Signet book. Beyond the last few sane green trees was a broad expanse of whitish hardpan running through toward a troubled horizon of sawtooth mountain peaks. They had no shading or texture, no folds or outcrops or valleys. They were the dead black Crayola mountains of a child. The path didn't disappear, but widened out, became a kind of cartoon road. There was a half-buried wagon wheel on the left. Beyond it was a stony ravine filled with shadows. On the right was a sign, black letters on bleached white board. To the Ponderosa, it said. The signpost was topped with a cow skull as misshapen as the cacti. Beyond the sign, the road ran straight to the horizon in an artificially diminishing perspective that made Steve think of movie posters for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There were already stars in the sky above the mountains, impossible stars that were much too big. They didn't seem to twinkle, but to blink on and off like Christmas tree lights. The howls rose again, this time not a trio or a quartet, but a whole choir. Not from the foothills. There were no foothills. Just flat white desert, green blobs of cactus, the road, the ravine, and in the distance, the shark-tooth necklace of the mountains. So I just think that's like a really, I don't know, beguiling and disarming sort of moment for these characters to watch the world around them like completely lack all texture and just become these kind of grotesque shapes, you know? And I don't know, that was one of the aspects of the book I thought was the most imaginative and so cool. Yeah. Any other sections we want to share?
I have two.
Bring them.
And they're short, but they're kind of like on the one you read. They're about the street, and I loved that this whole thing played out as a storm was happening because weather fascinates me. So on 71, not 271, 71. The stormy sky is coming apart, starting to release its cold reservoir. You see spots darkening all over the sidewalk, feels drops hitting the back of his neck in an increasing tempo. I've really loved that depiction of it starting to storm.
Yeah.
And then again on 245, he's talking about the street as it's becoming more sinister. On Poplar Street, the sun was starting to go down. It was too early for it to be going down, but it was just the same. It glared above the horizon in the west like a baleful red eye, turning the puddles in the street and the driveways and on top of the stoops to fire. It turned broken glass, which littered the block, into embers, which I just thought was really, really pretty and ominous in a really cool way.
Yeah, I love that.
I also had the section, I'm not going to read it, but where Ralphie is talking about, like, my hero wasn't there, right? Like, it wasn't Major Pike. Like, that really got me. And the kid with Shoeless Joe, you know, I liked that.
Yeah, I like that too. I remember that moment now because just the general idea that those characters are still real or like actually real to him, and the idea that they would be bad guys is like I almost wish he would have pushed that a little bit further, you know. So cool. All right, let's pop on over to our next section. It's called The Cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
Here in The Cemetery, we talk about what spooked us, what made us shiver our timbers. Does anybody have anything that comes straight to mind? I've got a few myself. I actually found aspects of this book pretty unnerving, but yeah. Jen, do you have one?
Oh yeah, the honey. That was the thing. That was the other thing that I remembered from this book. That just being so upsetting and like in a bizarre way. I'd never thought about that being a way that you could die or being hurt, and just how like demeaning it was to be forced to do that to yourself. And then talking about it being like a heavy weight in her stomach just really, really creeped me out.
Yeah, that section really disturbed me. I have that one written down as well.
The part of me that also was very disturbing for me, and I did have this, intrusive thought about how did King come up with that? Like, Sometimes like you can see his thought process for the different kinds of scary things that he does. They're often riffs on if you went I can't quite articulate it, but they're often kind of like almost riffs on what anyone would think, like as that could be an accident or something. Like a car coming to life is not like a out of the box, idea, but that one seems kind of out of the box in a really creepy way. And the other thing I would say is that it has to do with his best writing in the book, which is the street descriptions and the descriptions of when suburbia turns. Much like in Desperation, when I see my names are just I'm already bad with names, and then this book is just gonna do me in. But when they get pulled over by Collie, the scene you read is almost like the one where Mary, right?
Yep.
Mary and Peter, I think.
Mary and Peter, where she has that thing about this is not my life. This is not like, wait, how can this be happening to me?
Yeah.
Like the how can this be happening to me, I think, is sort of at the core of why Stephen King is so frightening. Yeah. Like that it's why me? Why is this happening? Why me? Why me? Why me? This shouldn't be happening to me. And it I think gets it. A lot of what he does well.
Yeah. So I agree with that.
I think the drive-bys were the scariest part for me. Just the idea of being shot at and not fully understanding what's going on and just like being trapped in the house. And I liked when the kids were like, well, I think again, I'm having trouble with the character names. They're like, we can escape out back. And it's that idea. I mean, growing up, I would have like dreams about that. Like, could I outrun someone if they were chasing me with a gun? So seeing the kids run and just, again, you just picture these vans riding around, and I don't know, that was just scary to me.
Well, the fact that Carrie, like the first one that's killed is like this 13-year-old kid, like that's really shocking, and it just pulls up right next to him, out come the gun, and just blows this kid away right there. It's such a disturbing way to kick off the book. I've got there's a lot of deaths that I think are pretty disturbing here, but the death of Pi, the mother of Ralphie and Ellen, is particularly gross and something that I think is very cinematic. It's something that would play well, I think, in a movie. But page 191 and 192 of my Signet edition. Another approaching drone, this one followed by a loud, unmusical clang as one of the copper pots hanging by the stove is hammered into a hulk of twisted fragments and flying shrapnel. And Pi is suddenly just screaming. No words now, just screaming. Her hands are clapped to her face, blood pours through her fingers and down her neck. Threads of copper litter the front of her misbuttoned blouse. More copper is in her hair, and a large chunk quivers in the center of her forehead like the blade of a thrown knife. Quills of copper bristle from her cheeks, her lips, her chin. It's just very disturbing to me, the idea of the exploding metal flying in someone's face. And this one's for deep listeners of the pod. When I stumbled across this, I shrieked a little bit when I realized that one of the motocops has an alien face with a bulging forehead, almond-shaped eyes that are dark and huge, and a mouth that isn't a mouth at all, but a kind of fleshy horn. That's the description of one of the motocops, and that to me is wildly disturbing as somebody who is very scared of alien faces. We've discussed this on multiple episodes of the pod. Loser Mel Castle loves to prod me endlessly about my fear of alien faces. So the fact that one of them has an alien face to me is particularly disturbing. Any other bits of cemetery, bits of horror that stood out to you?
I had Pi's death too, but I had a little later when her kids are watching it. Like that just really upset me when she's like convulsing and talking about like a humming sound in the back of her throat or something.
Yeah.
And then I had one that's really quick. Oh, also when they pick the girl's face up and it's like gone and it's like her teeth are there.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Ugh. But I think the one that really bothered me, aside from the honey, was also about Talk and Audrey. And it's on page 120, talking what it felt like having Talk inside her head. She felt Talk crawling inside her head, taking control. And although she saw it all and felt it all, she couldn't even scream. And that just really is upsetting. It reminds me of Wolf Creek, like a moment in that movie that I won't spoil. But.
I want to read when Peter Peter's final moments here, I always thought this is what I remembered most from my read as a child, was this image here. So he basically wanders into the, child desert, and let's see here. He says, and he finds like the body of that hobo or whatever that Tack initially used to like drain power from, and he sits next to it and he says, "Hello, friend," he said. He moved the bum's shopping cart so he could sit down beside him. As he settled against the cactus spines, feeling them slide into his back, he heard a cry and a gunshot and an agonized howl, all from far away, not important. He put his head on the dead bum's shoulder. Their grins were identical. "Hello, friend," the erstwhile James Dickey scholar said again. He looked south. His remaining sight was almost gone, but there was enough left for him to see the perfectly round moon rising between the fangs of the Black Crayola Mountains. It was as silver as the back of an old-time pocket watch, and upon it was the smiling, one-eye-winked face of Mr. Moon from a child's book of Mother Goose rhymes. Only this version of Mr. Moon appeared to be wearing a cowboy hat. "Hello, friend," Peter said to it, and settled back further against the cactus. He did not feel the exaggerated spines that punctured his lungs, or the first trickles of blood that seeped out of his grinning mouth. He was with his friend. He was with his friend, and now everything was all right. They were looking at Mr. Cowpoke Moon, and everything was all right. Just genuinely disturbing, and really fucked me up when I was a kid. The idea of the moon having a face has always been something that fascinates me, especially because, there's the whole man on the moon kind of thing. When you look at it, you can see facial features, and that always scared me as a kid. And so whenever anybody sort of anthropomorphizes, I can't speak, the moon, it always freaks me out a little bit. So any other bits of cemetery before we eat some pound cake like it was so much Chef Boyardee? All right, cool. Let's gorge ourselves on some pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin. Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven. He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
Here in Pound Cake, we talk about the stuff that made us laugh, perhaps in unintended ways. There is a lot of, and also I'd say just in this one, just general inappropriateness. So we already talked about, I think there's a lot of crossover between Misery and Pound Cake in this one. We've already touched on some of it. I have poop written down at least 13 times here. And, yeah, does anybody have any pound cake that they want to share?
A lot of my pound cake was Misery.
Yeah.
Yeah. My one of mine was one Jen already mentioned about the masturbating in the bathroom. I don't think he knows how women masturbate.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that's like
furiously.
Yeah.
That's what the impression.
Yeah.
I literally, my note says Seth Mom furious masturbate.
Yeah.
I think the bearded clam was another one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a weird tie between sex and violence in this book that, when people get in these life and death situations, they're not horny.
They're not horny.
They are these characters.
Yeah, I did. The part of what makes the Audrey masturbating thing weird is that I don't understand. Like, he tries to make it like, well, of course, like there's all this weird energy flowing in the house. Of course, masturbation would be the thing you do to get rid of it. And I'm like, is that how that would work?
Yeah. Well, there's a moment too, and I tried to find this, but I couldn't. I was just hearing it, but where the mother, it's either Kim or Cammie, at the end talks about how the feeling of maternal need from her son, combined with all the tragedy, led her to be horny for the first time in her whole life. And I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah,
where's the kid
Where'd that come from? Exactly. Like what's going on here? But
I've got plenty of poop talk here, but here we go. I think you mentioned this earlier, Jen, but I just thought the phrasing was really funny. Tax place, tax time, page 452, 453. In the bathroom adjacent to the kitchen, it can hear the boy. The boy is making the low, piggy grunting sounds Tack has come to associate with its elimination function. For Tack, even the sounds are revolting, and the act itself, with its cramping and its sensations of sliding, helpless exit, is hideous. Even vomiting is better. It's quick, at least, up the throat and gone. But I think I audibly laughed when I hit sliding helpless exit is a very, very funny way to describe pooping.
Yep.
And then
it's not I don't think it's a bad way to describe it.
No, it's just funny.
I think it's good. It's like a good description, but come on, guy. Like,
yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah, I've also got I just thought that the pinching seemed unnecessary. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, the pain had been worse on other occasions, not to mention the crappy little humiliations. Tack was an artist when it came to those, but there was a clear sexual aspect to the nipple pinching. And there was the way she was dressed or undressed. More and more Tack was making her take her clothes off when it was angry with her, or just bored, as if it, or Seth, or both of them, sometimes saw her as its own private gatefold version of the tough but unremittingly wholesome Cassie Stiles. Hey kids, check out the tits on your favorite moto cop. So that was another one. Just a lot of go ahead, Dave.
I kept thinking of like the South Park with Mel Gibson when he keeps pinching his nipples and he's like, oh, it feels so good. And like, that's the voice I heard with Tack whenever I heard that.
Yeah, and I feel like I have one other one here. Did you guys have any others?
I found two that I won't read the whole thing, but there's the phrase making an overcooked noodle hard and snuggling up to his boner. Like,
oh, sorry. I don't know why that cracked me up so much.
I know.
Just knocked my mic over laughing.
Yeah, I have a lot of others here. Just general, like, basically the word pussy and the word poop, like, are just all over this book, and in ways that feels relatively unnecessary. I also just thought it was weird when Ellie walks into the gas station right at the beginning of the book, and the first thing is she's 11 years old, but she's going to grow up to be a real beauty, and it's always gross to me. Even though it's framed through Cynthia's perspective, I just think it's a little bit weird. So I think we're all feeling a little bit dirty and overstuffed, so why don't we walk it off in a section we call King's Dominion.
There's another world out there.
I know there is.
So, in King's Dominion, we talk about relationships to larger places in basically the grander world of Stephen King. I have a couple here. Did you guys get any, or are they mostly just desperation related?
I got some.
Okay, good.
Well, I mean, do we count Smiley Smile references since they're in desperation too? But
sure, why not?
There is a Smiley Smile t-shirt on 31. And then mentioned a couple times, and then there's a Ka.
Oh, is
Ka,
there?
But he does like something like time is a wheel.
In
here at some point, there's like we're all on the wheel. I mean, it's maybe room 237, but I don't think so. Okay, so Haas had been one of Seth's favorites before Tack came to stay inside him, and so now he was one of Tack's favorites too. They rolled that way like a wheel. So
there it is.
I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it felt a little intentional to me.
I've got maybe a room 237, but on page 240 of my version, there's a reference to an author named Leon Uris, Uris, perhaps relation to Stan Uris of It, chapter 1 and 2. So
just King's inability to come up with new
new names. I always assume they're connected. Jen, what do you have?
Okay, well, the big one that I found was probably not a direct connection, but I looked at this as like Tuck and Seth's relationship is kind of what the Overlook wanted to do to Danny Torrance, like thinking about him like building things and using his ability, and kind of this like evil marriage of a kid with special not special needs, special abilities, being kind of invaded by an evil force and used to do grander things, which I thought was really cool. Don't like how it's handled, reference what I said earlier, but that's kind of the connection that I saw. And there's also an element of being inside someone's head and pulling switches and levers, which is something that I think comes up in the Dark Tower, like kind of in later episodes or books.
Yeah, there's similar. It's not the exact same, but that's similar to Dreamcatcher a little bit as well. Yeah.
I found out another along those lines. I can't remember which character references. Might be Seth's mother, but she says the government institution that studies special children, and that's literally what the institute, the plot is about.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
then another one was from Wizard and Glass, the big coffin hunters. The townsfolk in Hambry refer to them as the Regulators sometimes.
Oh, I didn't catch that at all. I'm about to read that book though, so I'll keep an eye out for that. That's good. I also have, this is just kind of classic King, on page 123. Don't, Dave said in a conspirator's hoarse whisper. His Adam's apple went up and down in his throat like something in a slot. Usually the Adam's apple goes up and down like a monkey on a stick, but that is a favorite of King's. But here it is something in a slot. So I think the monkey works better. And then obviously we have the direct reference to Stephen King's The Shining in the epilogue. There is a direct reference to that book, which is a cheeky little moment there. I think he used to only do that in Bachman books, and now he just does it in his own books. So.
In that, there's also the reference of other planes, living on a different plane of existence, which I thought was interesting. There's the Hummel figures, which are the figurines, which is Annie Wilkes has a Hummel figure that's a little penguin. And then there's also a point where Hank, they talk about him pulling out his lower lip and twisting it till it bleeds. And Annie Wilkes does that to herself in Misery.
Oh, interesting.
Which I think, given that I think Misery was originally going to be a Bachman book, and there's like the themes of abuse there, I think was an interesting tie. There's also a moment where they talk about Seth on page 159. Seth floats like a boy-shaped balloon, which I thought was cool.
I like that one. Any others we have before we move on?
Alan Symes dies on September 19th.
Oh, right, yeah. I remember catching that too.
That's fun. Always a good 19 in there.
Right.
Cool. All right. Let's move on to our final thoughts.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Welcome to Final Thoughts. This is where we share our bright red Pennywise Clown Nose rankings on this book, as well as our capsule review. And why not do an MVP? I'm kind of into the MVP idea these days. Jen,
I like it.
Jen, why don't you share your review, your Clown Nose rating, and your MVP for the book? All right.
I think overall, I like both of these books in connection to each other rather than I'm like either of them individually. There are things that I really, really like about this book that are really evenly balanced with the things I really, really don't like. So I think, but like I said at the beginning, it allows me to remove the emotion from the themes I think he's trying to get at in Desperation, which makes it easier for me to read. So I think I'm probably going to go 2.5 bright red Pennywise Clown Noses on this. And I think my MVP is going to be Poplar Street, because the times that I really liked is when he was describing the scenery. I don't know if that counts, but.
It counts. For you, Jen, anything counts. Dan Pfleegor, share your bright red Pennywise Clown Nose ranking, your MVP, and your review.
Yeah, I agree with what Jen said. I mean, you need that binary star of the two books working together. This one taking alone, though, just to review it, it does feel like a Twilight Zone episode. I think this would work better as a short story. There's just a lot of ideas that get thrown up here. I don't know that a lot of them are fully realized. I like seeing more about Tak, but he seems a lot more childish than the other version in Desperation, which I have a lot of thoughts for the next episode. Taken on its own, I'm going to give this 2 bright red Pennywise Clown Noses. And honestly, the MVP for me is the cover art. I just like the way the two books go together. I actually looked up, I think I shared it on the Discord, but King was promoting this on David Letterman. And there's a cool shot of David Letterman holding both books up that I had to screen grab because I was just like, oh, I love this. And just when I used to not have as many King books, I would proudly display these on my bookshelf with the art lined up. But now there's just no room here in Chicago. So
Cool. And then your MVP. Oh, wait, you already said it. I'm dumb. It was the books. Yeah. Ana, please share your bright red Pennywise Clown Nose rating and your MVP.
Oh, God. I'm going to give it 1 bright red Pennywise Clown Nose. It might be my... I don't know. I guess there's probably another King book I like less. But you could not read this book and that would be fine. Like as a King fan, like you're not really missing a whole lot. It doesn't fill any like holes in like the King's dominion. There's no like thing that you'll like, I don't know. There's just no thing that you would miss in his other stuff, for instance, by not reading this.
Yeah.
And then MVP, I think, it's so telling that the two of y'all chose non-characters, right? Like, it's really hard. Like of all of the actual characters in the book, the one I enjoy spending time with is Johnny, but who is my MVP for Desperation. But I think that's a little bit of a hangover from Desperation. Hangover is a word. And a little bit just because he's clearly one of the characters that King genuinely has affection for.
Yeah.
I think that I would go, it's so funny. Yeah, the scenery is in many ways like the best part of this book, both in the depiction of suburbia and in the depiction of suburbia becoming a child's depiction of the Old West.
Yeah.
Like those are the two, like that's like the coolest part of the book. And again, like, God, why didn't someone edit this? Why?
Yeah, that dovetails into my review, I think, too, is I just feel like this book is so, it needed an editor, it needed more time. And I think, because I don't know, when I just think about this in sort of an anecdotal way, I think about like that he started writing this the day after he finished Desperation. He told his publisher, I've got this great idea, we're going to release them at the same time. But the thing is, like, they probably wanted to release Desperation relatively soon, so I have a feeling he wrote this book pretty quickly to sort of do the gimmick, like I just get the vibe that he usually spends like a year, 2 years on his books, if not longer, and but he's usually working on many simultaneously, which is why we get so many. But this feels like one where it just like shat right out of him, and it just feels to me like it was a catharsis book, and that is cool in some way because there's a propulsive aspect of this book that I think is appealing and interesting, and there are a lot of cool ideas in here, but none of them feels like it reached its end conclusion, like its end place where it really would have been satisfying and coalesce into a story, into an identifiable theme that feels purposeful and resonant. It's like nothing in it quite lands like it should. And I think that's where I struggle with it, is I just feel like there's a lot of untapped potential here. But also I think the general sense that he really dislikes most of these people doesn't make it a pleasurable read. And that to me, because that's the thing, is like King always has affection for his characters. And I think for listeners to this podcast and for us, that's what we like, is that it's like, sometimes we make fun of King for like, okay, here's 30 pages about a character you'll never see again, but that's also part of his charm, is that he really does like to build out complex and nuanced inner lives for most of his characters. We don't get that here, and that is frustrating. So we just get this general sneering sense of condescension and disdain. So I think that's where I struggle. But at the same time, I think this book is actually, at least in terms of things that scare me, I actually think this book is pretty spooky at times, because the uncanny quality of the child's drawing manifesting in the real world is something that really works for me, which is why my MVP is going to be Mr. Cowpoke Moon, because I love that section, and it sort of represents to me that aspect of the child's drawing manifesting in the real world. It's a cool idea, and that section with Peter where he's leaning against the cartoon spines and it's killing him, and he's like completely, his eyes are poking out of his head. It's a grotesque image that has stuck with me, since I first read this book, and I can give it credit for that. So I'm actually going to give it what Jen gave it. I'm going to give it 2.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses, because I think those things, at least for me, go a long way. So so that's our review. I think we average out probably around 2.
Two, exactly. One of our lower ratings.
Yeah, definitely one of our lower ratings, which is not surprising. The nice thing is, I think we'll be in a much more positive mood with our next book, Wizard and Glass. I think most of us are fans of that one. So, and then I'll also say, trying to think of what else is on the docket. We've got a commentary for Christine coming up. We've got In the Mouth of Madness, a Crate episode on that movie, which is kind of an underrated movie, I think. It's really enjoyable. And lots of other fun stuff. So please, follow us on our socials if you don't already. If you are not a Patreon subscriber, we'd love to have you. You can find us at patreon.com/thebarons. We've got all kinds of fun episodes and, monthly hangouts with us and with our listeners, which is also a great aspect. We have a great active, really fun Discord channel as well. And where else can we find you guys? Jenn, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me at also the Psychoanalysis Podcast. We are in the middle of March, which we are looking at schizophrenia this month. And we started with Hereditary, and we're going to conclude that with They Look Like People. And then in the midst of all of that really heavy talk, we're going to have some comfort horror episodes on One Cut of the Dead, which was so much fun.
Still never seen that.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. Go in completely blind. And then we're going to close off March with a comfort horror episode on Children of the Corn. So that'll be fun.
Crossover.
Dominion. I know.
Great. And then Ana, where can we find you?
I have a politics and sort of culture commentary podcast, I guess, called With Friends Like These, that who knows if you'll enjoy it if you're listening to this, but you might give it a try.
It's
and
great.
Then if you are listening to this, thank you very much. And if you are listening to this, you'll probably like my other genre podcast, which is called Space the Nation, which I do with an international relations professor. And we talk about kind of the politics in sci-fi, not like transporting politics of today onto it. And then I'm at Ana Marie Cox. You can find out more about Space the Nation at patreon.com/Space the Nation. And I want to say, speaking of crossovers, Jenn and I have been talking about doing some crossover stuff. I want her to come on Space the Nation to talk about trauma and sci-fi.
And I want Ana to come do a comfort horror episode.
Hell yeah.
So
love it.
If losers love crossovers.
That's right.
We do love it. And Pfleegor, where can we find you?
No crossovers for me, sadly. I occasionally appear on Halloweenies. Dan Pfleegor on most socials. Keep wearing your mask, folks. That's all I got to promote.
Double it if you want. There's no shame.
Double it
no
up.
Shame. You won't.
We're almost there, but just finish strong, folks.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
And you can find me at Randall Colburn on most socials and and here on the Losers Club podcast and various writings on the internet.com. So thank you all so much for listening. This has been a fun episode. Shall we sign off with a long days?
Long days
and
pleasant nights.
Pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends.